time is 2:30. The date is Wednesday, February 9th. We are the district office, and with us we have Mary Shumway, board member, Steve Black, board member, Lori Mon, board member, Superintendent Nelson, and Business Administrator Tyrell Pemberton, and other staff. And Nelson Yellowman will be joining us later, and we have not heard yet from Still, who will also be virtual. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved.
Second,
Any discussion?
just a question, is there any suggested changes to this agenda?
Not that I can foresee. Who knows? It's a rodeo around here. Might change in the next 5 minutes. Oh, as far as I know, no. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We will move to the spotlight report immediately. 3 minutes go.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to highlight, we've talked about this and we've taken great steps to make sure our staff is aware of this, the benefit that's being provided, but we do have a little bit of update of how it's working and the role that it's playing. Tava Health is a company that we have contracted with that provides any type of counseling support to our licensed employees that qualify as benefit eligible. And it's critical that they're benefit eligible, otherwise it affects all the things in the HR office that are very challenging and tricky. But it does work for all of our benefit eligible employees, and we let them know that they have the ability to just receive help virtually, and any type of support that they might need in the social emotional area. There's a great resource, and we're starting to see that it's being used. It's very confidential. We don't have names, and that's the way we want it. But in a time when you're hearing a lot of concern of our educators and those that are working, and the mental health of them, and all that they're going with the pandemic and all the things that are expected, you know, I state that this is a great service, and I also want to again throw it out there as a reminder to our staff that, you know, if this is a need, let's use it. Let's reach out, and the more that we can do in the area of self-care, the more that we're ready to help best serve others. And so this is just an update. It is also, by the way, National Counselor Week. So again, throw a shout out to our counseling team, our support teams in the school, who are doing a tremendous job. And so I just wanted the board to be aware again of what's happening there and see some reports that are coming.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, Superintendent? All right. Okay, we have a long agenda, so we'll get going. You get to start off with an update on the redistricting.
In our last meeting, I was directed by the board to put some information together, a little bit of an educational information that could go out. We wanted a letter. You asked me to pen a letter to our county commissioners, and you also asked me to try to provide any type of education to our public of the regarding the situation of redistricting and the maps that were being proposed at the time by the county commission had some far-reaching consequences, and we were concerned as a board, you were concerned of everyone fully understanding what it could entail, what the consequences could be, and it was important that our public have an opportunity to fully understand it, one, and two, if they wish, to provide their voice to be heard. I believe to the best of my ability, I did that. I did put a video together. I'm sure you saw that. It was sent out to you. We worked with principals to try to find the best strategic time to stream that. We put it with basketball games, and then we threw it out on Facebooks and other places. And we did know it got a lot of views. So that went out to the public, to our stakeholders, our parents. A letter was penned that was sent to our county commissioners, and they also received a copy of the video. And in all cases, we were very clear of the map in which the board was strongly in favor of, which was the option B Eastland map. I did attend, President Mon attended, our business administrator Tyrell attended the county commission meeting here. Is it a week ago now? And we were, you know, we left there, we were not successful in having the county adopt the option B Eastland map. They did go ahead and leave in place the NNHTN map that had been drawn by the Navajo Nation. And it was the map that, as far as we can tell, I'm still yet to see a detail to the road level, the street level, but it still looks very apparent on paper as if now 3 incumbents will be, 3 board members will now be moved to District 4. And so I just want the board to be aware that as we look through the code and try to look at the consequences that could come from this, it does appear that everything that we talked about is in line to happen. That Lucille, Mrs. Cody's tenure will end in December of 22. The map comes into play January of 23. The code is very clear that if there are 2 or more board members that are still have tenure that are in that district, which if we are correct and Lori and Steve are both moved into that district, that you do, it says you by lot you determine. I'm assuming that's a coin flip, could be maybe another means, but you determine a winner that would represent that district, and the other board member would become at large. So all of that is playing out. I have been in contact with the county. They are actually in charge of putting this all together. They're preparing to send out information to the public that would start on March 7th through March 11th will be the time period to file for candidacy. And it does look like we would have possible open seats in 1, 3, and 5 districts would be open for. Now, whether they are 2 or 4-year terms, I think the county is looking into with some state support of whether that would be 2 or 4-year terms. The stagger that we've always come accustomed to of 1, 2, and 3 being together and 4 and 5, they're going to look into whether that is legally been drawn by that way, or do they have discretion maybe to even change some of that up. So that has potential to possibly change. You could make 1, 3, and 5 on now. If they were all 4-year, they would go on a stagger, and then that would put 2 and 4 back together on a different site. If that's legal, they would be able to. They'll provide more information. The last thing I'd say to this, and then I'll try to answer any questions there are any. If there's any further, if the board has any further desires to talk of any further steps, whether they be legal or anything like that, those probably would move to a closed session type discussion forum. It's on here, I believe, as an action item. Maybe it's not, but anyway, you could move to a closed session on this if you felt. That's really what we know, and that's the update. You do have the attached maps that are still in place as the current maps.
Any questions on this? Nelson, did you catch the bulk of that discussion?
Hello?
Chris?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm having difficulties hearing you.
Got any better?
Yes,
So do you have any questions or discussion on this item?
you're still choppy. I don't have anything to say until we go to closed session, probably.
So is this something you'd like to discuss in closed session?
If we need to, I will then.
Yes, I was having a little issue with the time.
Okay.
Let's get under
It was
control.
close. I will report to the board regarding our COVID, our reentry plan, that we are encouraged by our most recent data. It definitely spiked the end of December and into January. In the last week and a half, overall, we have seen our numbers turn downward in a pleasing manner. Our numbers are less, but I think we're seeing as of yesterday, what you have in front of you as of yesterday is in the 20s. We were up as high as, I think, 38. And that mirrors what we've seen in our county starting to is starting to also be lowered, and so is the state and the national numbers as well. So I would just say that we are continuing all the things we're doing, and we are hopeful that a lot of the things you read in here, that I at least read in here, is that with this Omicron, it'll go down. They think it'll go down nearly as quickly as it went up. It spiked very quickly, and they're hoping it drops very quickly. So maybe even by next board meeting, we'll see things even much lower than they are now. But we do feel pretty good about where things are at. Just a quick follow-up to last board meeting. Nelson, you talked a lot about increasing our quality of masks and our use of the masks, making sure they're worn properly. We did make sure that our transportation department, our schools had N95 masks, and we did try to build into the safety meetings with our transportation department and with our school. We worked with our school nurses to provide training for how to wear those masks effectively. So we hope that that has been an improvement. I'm sure there's isolated cases of individuals not wearing them correctly, but we have tried to provide some support in that area.
Any question? Lucille, are you on?
I think she
Can I
is.
see you?
She is
Yes,
on.
she's
Oh,
on.
good. Can you hear us?
You're muted right now, Lucille.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Nelson, do you have any comments from the superintendent regarding the COVID?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you and appreciate the superintendent getting those better quality masks out to the schools and transportation department. I have been seeing those individuals utilizing those masks. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is Christy here? Are you? Gina, is she here? Okay. Yeah, number 4.
I wonder if they got the 2:30 start next
I
week.
texted her and said, oh, did you know that you're starting? She got back to me, but I wonder if she's on it. Okay, the principal or something. So the letter really just indicates, I don't know if you had a chance to read that or not, but the School Children's Trust notified all districts that we need to set not only date for our plans to be due locally, but also. So that really is what we're just sharing this letter with you and request that the board set a date for final reports. We're suggesting February 18th. That's also the state's date. We told principals this year that February 15th, we have a few days to look at. We can still do that, say, as a team, we're going to review it by a certain day, that the board date would be the 18th, which is the same as the state date. And then we talked about in the November or December board meeting, April 1st for upcoming plans. Usually that's always been our date, so that we have that month to review plans prior to bringing them to you in May. That way the funding can come to us at the fiscal year. If they're not approved by that May 15th deadline for the state, then they have to, and we can't guarantee that our money comes to the business office by August. So that's kind of why those are kind of some rationales behind those dates, but that's what we recommend. And that would be on the to be approved on the consent agenda. Okay. Thanks, Julie. All right, Christy, how are you?
You guys are on the timer today. Good job. Because the new timer.
That is why. So there you go.
All right. This is to sound maybe a little familiar to last month when we talked about the amendment or spend this guy. So really this is looking at intervention and ways to provide additional support to the students and the data that we're receiving. The reason we have this allocation is we hired a different first grade teacher that week before school started, and that the salary cost was less for the student teacher. So that's what this is. So what they're proposing is to provide additional paraprofessional support for small group instruction, both for language arts, early foundational literacy, and then a little bit of money for additional manipulatives. So the small group students have their own set of manipulatives, kind of similar to what we were doing. So,
Does anyone have questions?
I have a comment,
Yeah.
if I could. I know I've said this before, so when you've heard it enough times, just tell me don't say it again, but we used to get our trust land plans, and then you rarely would see an amendment come to you. Rarely would you see this play out like you have at least 3 or 4 times this year. And then we would have all this carryover money, and the state would zing us. They'd zing us with a pretty good reprimand letter. And so we've really had to train our system, our principals all the way up. It ties into the business office, keeping them with the correct numbers on their budgets. But this is wonderful when we see this, because schools are really tracking their budgets. They're making sure we don't have a lot of carryover. And when they see adjustments are needed, they're getting back together, revising plans, and bringing them to the board. So I just want you to know that regardless of whether you like this plan or not, I love the process that our schools are bringing these to us. And it's a big improvement over just a few years ago when we were never seeing these.
Well, and they know what is best in their school. They're dealing with what those individual needs are, so.
yeah, and I think a little of the reflection of this time of year is that we knew, obviously, as soon as we hired a new teacher in August, that we would have some excess, but you know, when we make these plans with our school community councils, the parents are giving input. Sometimes you need a little bit of a time for more additional data to make a determination of what's the best way to spend that money for the year. So that's why you're kind of doing some of this time of year, is because that now we have data to say, here's the need that we have. Parents are supportive of that need.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have questions? All right. Ms. Gina. Welcome. Thanks. All right, you get the floor.
I would just like to request the opportunity or ability to issue a survey to our secondary education students, both at the middle school and in the high schools. Perkins 5 funding requires a local needs assessment every 2 years, and to help us gather data for those needs assessments, the state has put together surveys, and one of them is directed towards students. So we would like to be able to. Oh, good job. Questions are right there, out there for you. But we would like to have the students take those in the schools, so we know that we're getting a good amount of data.
So have we done this before?
I honestly don't know.
I think they have in years past.
I
It's,
don't remember.
the
this
surveys
specific
are,
one, but-
they do come out every 2 years, but I don't know if they've been in the schools or not.
So are they given to all students throughout the entire school district? I mean, to explain who exactly will take the survey. And is it done one day? And if students aren't there?
So it's not required for every student, but clearly we want the most amount of students that we can get to take the survey so that we have more reliable data. But I would like to just be able to work with principals and make sure that we're not interrupting other learning time. Maybe do it during their academic labs. And I don't, there's not really a way to track which students take it. It's all anonymous. And so we wouldn't know who took it or who didn't. We just want to be able to have the most amount of data to base decisions off of.
And about how long does this survey take?
5 minutes.
I should say it's pretty,
It's really
straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this.
Any questions? Nelson, Lucille, any questions? No, there are any.
No questions on.
And it's an action item. Okay,
Okay, thank
all
you
right,
so
thank
much.
you. All right, we're to number 6.
Yes, this is the second viewing for our public, for a public window. And, you know, we've put out a couple of notices to our public to even hopefully encourage that they do look at these and they do bring in some input. We had an article in the paper. Julie wrote an article for the paper about this in recent editions of the San Juan Record. But anyway, this is the second viewing. State law now requires 2 viewings. So in essence, this could be approved tonight, but it's not even on there as an action item because we had talked about giving it 3 viewings for our public. So it'll be on as an action item next meeting. I have received, Steve has given me some input. I would really welcome any input from board members of any fee waiver or spend plans. One of the things that I would like to maybe talk just a little bit about, and it does go along with some of the input I received from Steve, is, you know, we have our program sustainability fee schedule. A couple things to keep in mind there is, one is there is legislation in place right now that if it were to pass, there is a proposal to put a lot of money, whatever, you know, a fair amount of money for each LEA into the WPU, with the understanding that that now LEAs would not be allowed to charge for curricular or general fees. So if you look at our program sustainability fee, you can see we've labeled those. That's a new thing, but we did this at the end of last year. You can see what's curricular and what's general. All of those fees, if that legislation does pass as it is presently written, the intent is we would receive money in our WPU to compensate for that, to take care of that, and we would no longer have those on our fee schedule. Now, there's quite a few of them actually. I mean, it's a pretty fair amount there. Extracurricular would still be on there, but general and curricular would not. Co-curricular would, as far as I understand at this point. Is that your understanding? Co-curricular still would? That's what I understand.
Only things that happen outside of the school.
Yes, and that's co-curricular.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
So
If it's curricular, it's happening during the day, and if it's co-curricular, it's probably attached to a class, but happening after school.
and any of these activities that are, let's say the first one up there that is extracurricular is baseball. Students can obtain, help me if this isn't accurate, half of a PE credit through their sports. Is that right? Through drill team,
Yeah,
cheerleading,
and I'm the,
baseball,
yes,
football.
I get, yeah, I know
So-
they could. Up to a certain point, yes.
Yes, so is one of those one time that should be considered curricular, even on the extracurricular, that fee?
I don't think anyone's looking at it that way, but
Okay.
because they're very clear in the definitions, is if it happens after school, it's extracurricular, or if it's
Okay.
attached to a class, it's
So-
co-curricular. I think that's just a caveat that is provided to some degree to help give credits.
Okay, but that could, if they chose to, it could
But
eliminate a fee, a one-time fee for that, but they're, yeah, probably not, you know, that way.
But the state's moving more and more towards, you know, personal competency-based grading anyway, that there could be more and more credits awarded for students that are working outside of our regular day. You've got to demonstrate that you are covering the standards and you're mastering them. But that's what's happening in those areas. They believe that they have covered enough standards to give them or them a quarter credit. But what I wanted to bring up about this schedule is, you know, it's not very often. 2 years ago, when we changed everything over, we increased some of these costs. They hadn't been increased for probably, we estimated 7 to 10 years before that. So it's not very often that our coaches and our public and anyone that even is really evaluating, you know, inflation and other things like that. So, and it's a hard call. If we don't need to raise them, we're covering our expenses, then that's great. But I'm a little worried that sometimes we don't look out ahead very often and realize it until we see a problem. And then we may wish we'd have been a little more proactive into looking at things. So anyway, the one that I'd like to bring up and really point out is the mill reimbursement rate that is approved on here. It's, if you'll go, you gotta go down to find that one. But right there, that's $10. And I am hearing some concern that that's, unless you just pretty much go to McDonald's and maybe even use the dollar menu. But if you go into any kind of other establishment, you're gonna have a very difficult time with $10. So I just want the board to be aware that is one I'm hearing. And I'm hearing it from school personnel that that's difficult. So I think it's something to just think about and maybe reflect on between now and March. I will do as well. But that may be, you know, those kind of things we may be wanting to look at. I could also really reach back to our coaches and say, hey, are you sure these numbers reflect what your program needs to stay viable? You know, as right now for the next year, that's what's important is we're setting this for next year. We don't want any of you to say, oh, I just thought that had to be the same amount every year. No, this is the process where everybody brings information and the board ultimately decides using all that information, what is the appropriate amount in those areas.
So could we ask coaches for an average of that meal rate? Like, I mean, they kind of know where they eat, but it might come in like $13 a meal.
We can ask for their input, yes, in that meal
Probably
rate.
should.
I mean, kids just go all over to eat, so they, you know, they don't know exactly what kids are spending. But I think what they're finding is when they go in and look and watch, most kids are spending more than $10.
Well, you can go to Subway, it's $12.
But the
Just
question
a
is,
drink
can
and
you go and
sandwich.
eat something that will fill them up? Are there options for $10?
Yes.
Because if there are, then we're, you know, we have to pay that, whatever it is that people,
We buy that.
their need
All
and
three of
or
our
they
students.
want. And if
All
it's
three
a,
of our
if it's a need, so.
I just know the lunch is so much more expensive than it used to be. Just, I mean, an average lunch, but, one, are you done with the schedule? So one concern I had, and I don't know, I mean, I will give my recommendations to the superintendent, but we do have a junior high FBLA overnight trip on their spend plan. They should not have, if it's a, it's a junior high ARL, it's, if they go to
It's FHA,
nationals.
and we already talked about that.
What is
It's
it?
FHA.
It's it, well, there's a few
The middle
national trips put in here and we kind of decide, well, you should
Oh,
there
should
should
be
be.
all these
If-
No, we've got all the nationals. So there is a
It's a FBLA.
ARL,
I thought it was FHA.
FBLA, there's MHS is an FBLA and FCCLA. And San Juan High School has an FBLA to nationals, so we will need to look at those.
Now, keep in mind with any of the San Juan Foundation has a practice in place and has for years. Any of those type of competition, national winners that work through a competition, they provide a stipend of either, it's been 500 for any West Coast national competition, and it's been 700 for any Midwest, Mid-East or East Coast. So that's probably why that's never been really a big concern to spend plans, because they're providing most of that travel money. I need to look through those. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if something's got by my attention or not, if there's any of the close-up type trips in there.
So we
If there
have
are, I think the board really needs to think about, do we still approve like Washington DC trips that have nothing to do with any kind of competition? Or student leadership conferences, because those have been popular in our district. And we have students going to a leadership conference this year. We've had them going last year. It is 100% financed by our grant, our Native American demonstration grant. That's been happening since we got our grant. That has nothing to do with a spend plan because it's financed by grant, no parent is charged. But if we do start a precedent of approving those trips, and for any reason the grant money's gone, then those trips would fall right in lines with any, you know, if other kids are going on these type of trips, that I would see a hard time saying that trip doesn't also qualify as a national trip. Is that making sense?
Yes,
So,
and we have talked about that in the past. And, you know, anything can change any time, but we decided at the time, let's just not include those if people want to go, but they're not required to go on those.
No, they're not
And
required.
even the state, the national, when you win a national competition and you go, they're not required to go on those either, so.
So that junior high one is Smithfield, and it's if they go to nationals, then that would be the overnight. That's what their junior
Oh,
high
would
one
it
is.
have somebody?
Is there any close-up type trips? I wanted to,
Close up?
or Washington DC type trips?
No,
No,
there's
we
not,
chose
but
not.
there is like FBLA or SCCLA.
Yeah, that's,
And
those are
all
competition
field
based, yeah.
nationals, so. Anyhow, Okay.
Monticello used to do a Washington trip
that's not
for
in there
years
anymore.
and it's not in there.
And Monument Valley used to.
That's not in there, anymore, so.
Okay.
Steve?
Just wanted to throw out, San Juan High Stats 1040. Go to the jazz game. Sounds like it's Stats 1040 college class. I assume so. Does that fall under? He's a paid.
It's still a high school class. So yes, it does.
So they said in that somebody's paying for the jazz tickets. Is the district paying for the transportation?
So I would be sure the district's paid for the transportation.
What school is that?
It's the San Juan. I think this is a trip that has functioned in the past, but as fee waivers have been, as we've done a better job of helping everyone understand fee waivers, they've realized this is a fee waiver trip because parents are charged. So you're seeing some things as we've improved and done better. It's catching more and more of our system, which is good. But yes, I think this is not a new trip. It's been happening, but as I'm aware of it,
I will. I was your boy
Did we,
as a student.
as a student.
How long ago was that?
So
And I think they thought they were part of the fee waiver, think that they are. They charge parents money.
did we, help me recollect on the senior gifts? So we do have one in there this year. In the senior gifts, they have a budget of $100 per,
No, we're not doing that. We shouldn't be doing that.
so that was that, I wrote that on my recommendation, so I just wanted to make sure.
I thought we had agreed that you could have a responsible amount. I think we were talking, weren't we talking like $10 or $20 max for?
For this one's the senior gifts, $100 only for seniors, so I don't know if that's $100. No,
Which
it can't be
one?
total, because
Oh,
these are.
really?
What is that one on?
Sound on high
That would
cheer.
be very helpful to have the board very clear on what you'd like to see with senior gifts. That's
Well, I
a-
think we just talked about it last year, that's why I brought that up. So we decided,
We had a pretty good discussion about it initially. And I'm of the opinion that we're paying for a lot for these kids to be involved and do a lot of things. And it's an expense that most of them don't even have the ability at this point in their lives to appreciate the kind of money that's put into their, and parents and school district does that for their benefit. But then to give them a gift on top of that, I don't think is appropriate with tax dollars. I think it's appropriate if,
can we go back to last year, even not today, but for our next meeting, see what we had kind of decided with that? Would you?
And what I think,
Thanks.
if I remember, what I would ask for the board is on some of those general arching kind of principles like senior gifts and those things. I would ask that you very clearly, and we've learned this through training through Steve, but very clearly put that into the motion. Because I could tell you what happens a little bit when we try to remember exactly what the board's intention was, is like you just said, you just spoke out on your personal.
my personal opinion.
And if that is the board's direction, boy, we are all on board with making sure that is reflected. But when you go back and listen to the minutes, you're never quite a little bit sure as, well, no one else spoke to that. Was that a personal opinion? Was that a board opinion? So I really think that between now and that's why this is so good to be having this discussion. By next, I think in March, you can be really thoughtful as to what motions do you want to make sure included that will be very explicit in being reflected in these spend plans from the board, not necessarily from any board member's individual point of view, but as collectively. And once we pass that motion, that's the board speaking, and we'll do our dangest to reflect that. But there are some times we have a hard time
Well, I'd like
sorting
to-
that out.
Yeah, and I'd like to see what we
Because our-
talked about last time, because we did have that discussion, and I felt like we kind of came to a consensus as what we were, but you're right.
You know,
We may have been very vague, who knows, so.
and what would happen if there's no senior gifts in any way in this? You will have, what we will say is if there's senior gifts, there has to be, I mean, you will still have parents that will want to do things outside of our control. And I don't know how you could ever stop that for parents. If five
Isn't
parents.
that allowed? If they weren't parents want to do that?
Yes,
That's allowed.
it is
So
allowed.
we're not saying that
Yes.
parents can't do for their kids what they want to do. It's just whether or not tax dollars are going to.
Yes, that's what
By
I'm
the
trying to
gift.
say right there. But keep in mind that it gets a little bit of pressure, but it's not pressure that we control.
Right.
If there's 10 parents of seniors and 8 want to spend $50 and 2 are like, now of course they don't have to spend it, but what does it look like when 8 out of the 10 kids get a nice senior gift and the other 2 don't? Because school's not, that's not us. We are, and you're seeing a little of that even this year. I don't know how much you're aware, but we did have some concern. We looked into it, and I think we're fine. But this year's boys basketball program, we worried that we had a situation that might be a fee waiver. They are doing a lot of filming, and it's outside of, basically all we're allowing is them to have a camera at our games. But that filming is going to produce a documentary that goes back to when these senior boys, from what I understand, were very young, and all the way up through of all of this, all the footage they can bring together. And then the parents are going to spend, I don't even know the amount, because we don't need to be involved and even know the amount. But there's parents that are going to purchase that. And we don't know who's purchasing it and who's not, because again, it's not anything to do with us. But that's how senior gifts will need to be handled. We don't know.
Yeah,
We don't
and I
know.
think they should be. I don't think we should try to control what the parents do or don't do. But
Because I know
Tax
coaches
dollars
do
for it.
feel some need to do something and make it look right anyway. And it's a pretty good tradition in our programs. I was at the gym at San Juan High on, was it Saturday? Senior night? I mean, and that's no different than I've seen at Monticello. So anyway, but just be aware. And that's why I think it's good to have this discussion, because next month, I think you can really have thought about how you want to provide that motion to provide clarity and what you want to see.
Anything else? All right, let's go to our number 7, our secondary school spring sports schedules. Anybody have any questions on those? We just need to prove that those are over 150 miles.
We don't have Navajo Mountain, so I'm assuming we'll receive those late. They're not on here that I ever got. But you have the others. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary type.
And those will be on the action item, so. All right, let's go to our proposed meeting schedule for next year. I see Anita has that printed up for you. It's a handout.
This is just a draft, but we did want to put this before the board and give you an opportunity to look at it. We would like to lock these in, either this meeting or next meeting if possible, if not possible today, just to start building calendars around them, and principals meetings and other meetings usually get put around these. And I know I've had some of you express some interest in having these dates. So that's a proposed, it's very consistent with what we've done in past years. We've rotated LaSalle and Navajo Mountain in past years. And that rotation continues. We're going to Navajo Mountain this year. We're scheduled to be there I think in, what have been two board meetings, I believe. But anyway, so we'll be in that amount. Any concerns or questions or thoughts?
I have a suggested change in June. This is going by the, what is it, the second Wednesday of the month, but in June, that's a critical month where we have historically held the meeting as late in June as possible, waiting to get the information from the county on valuation. That's when we set our budget, and to do it in June, or June 14th off, it's not likely. I think there was 1 year in the lot of years served that we actually had that information from the county. So then another meeting is technically required for us to meet before the end of June, because that's the deadline. So we need to meet as late in June as possible. That's our most important meeting of the entire year when we approve our annual budget.
This year, we do have it a week later this year, so on the 22nd. So that, I'm sure that same reasoning
Right,
is why it got moved a week back.
Yeah.
And then we also moved it back last year.
Yeah.
June 21, so like
That one just,
So should we just move it to the 21st or 21st of June anyway for 23?
21st or 28th.
has to be the 21st. So we have to adopt tax rate. Second.
Oh, okay.
So the 21st.
is
So
what I,
21st is when you-
Okay. Nelson Lucille, we're proposing to move that June date of 2023 to the 21st. It's listed as the 14th on your schedule.
Fine with me.
And this last year, when we moved it back, and then you had a late June meeting, and if we have a really light July, we actually didn't have a July meeting this year because we had a late June, we didn't have a lot of pressing things in July, and so we did. So we might, I don't know if on July's, if we want to ever put it maybe in brackets, optional, so the public's
do that
aware
like
that
that.
that one's not.
Let's do,
yeah.
that was heavy.
But we don't have the July meeting. Well, yeah, the upcoming one.
Yeah.
I guess.
You may or may not.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, for that.
All right, anything else? Okay. Graduation dates. That is
Good time.
sadly around that's around the corner.
Yes, graduation promotions, these are just dates, we've tried to get these out as early as possible to the board members. You can put these in your calendar, the ones that you wish to attend, you're invited to all of them, but the ones you wish to attend, at a certain point, as it gets a little closer, Eva will generate a list of who's looking to attend which promotions and which graduation ceremonies, so we can kind of get a feel for who will be there. But again, this is very consistent with what you've seen in years past. I went in and I was able to listen to a little bit of some of the discussion regarding graduations a few years back. And there was a lot of discussion even like with Saturday graduations. And at that point, it was decided, we were probably okay with, the board said at that time, we're not necessarily saying no to Saturday graduations. Well, we've had them ever since, so, and we've had them recently, so. But anyway, I think this is very standard to what we've had in recent years.
All right. We're to number 10. State school board work update.
Yeah, this one is really an FYI for your information. I just want the board to be aware that this work is going on. This probably isn't a surprise, but LEAs are working through a lot of very sensitive issues in our schools regarding Title IX, and Title IX governs some very sensitive issues such as your transgender student issues and all of those situations that might bring questions, regarding not just transgender, but same-sex attraction students and things like this as to facility use, traveling, making trips and signing rooms. All of those questions are very current questions right now, and we are not immune from it. We certainly have our share of cases that questions that are being asked from school level to district level. But how do we deal with this situation? What do we do? Well, the State Board of Education is working through a process, and they're in the open public comments section of that, to develop a guiding document for all the LEAs. It will not be a binding document. It's intended to be a guiding document, but it will provide some guiding support for LEAs and how to handle these situations. I did have a coach, an advisor actually asked me the other day, I'm aware of a transgender student. We're going on a trip. We will be assigning rooms. Do I assign that room for that person? Which gender do I assign that person for? Those are the kind of real questions that are coming up. So, you know, we are receiving training. We've had, even just this week, we had a Title IX training. We had state risks come down and provide support for our administrators. Another large group went to Moab here about a month ago, over to Grand, and we joined with Grand and received the same training there. We've provided in-service. Mr. Kais, our HR director, just attended a national conference on this because it is so timely. So we are trying to bring the right knowledge base into our district to be successful with navigating this. But this is a document that if it is passed and it continues, will be given to us as an LEA as a guiding document. So I really am not prepared to speak really to the pros and cons of it. I'm just prepared to say, board, I just want you to be aware, because you should be aware that these things are, they're what's in our, it's a part of navigating our schools today. So maybe not always recognized or fully aware of it. But, and you could read through this explicit, guiding instructions that are in there. Anything that.
When will this be approved? Or are
I
they gonna
think they'll
approve it
bring
or
it back
when
up
do
in
they-
one of their upcoming meetings. It's got a certain.
Yeah, they're taking input
Yeah, right,
currently.
yeah.
Well, and actually, so if they approve this, then this will be the guiding document for the state. Correct? Yes. Give or take, you want to
It'll
use
be the
it?
guiding document. I mean, it's a really difficult, you know, the real questions, there's some tough ones that are hard to answer, such as if you were to have a transgender student, and in here it does say that they, how they identify is how you place them in room assignments. So that is the possibility of saying you had a male transgendering to a female student that now identifies in that role. They're going on a trip. You have both sexes on this trip. It's choir or whatever. Now you would assign that student in female rooms because that is how they identify. So to what degree, and there certainly needs to be some consideration, and the document talks a little to it of parent input and parent being aware, but to what degree are students and parents acceptable with that, and all of those things play out. And so there's just a lot of very sensitive, tough issues to work through. I just want the board to be fully aware that we will try to provide support for our staff and as much training and expertise as we can as we move forward to be as legal and as successful and appropriate as possible, and still work with our public and do those things.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, I have a question.
Hi, Nelson.
Yeah, this goes to superintendent. Who did you say did the trainings? Who provided the trainings?
State risk management, a specialist out of our state risk management came down and provided some Title IX training. That training was really focused on doing investigations. If we get a Title IX complaint, how do we go about investigating and the process that it must navigate through to be legally appropriate?
It always make me wonder if Utah State Board of Education is not quite looking a variety of ethnic background and religious beliefs of families. You know, for example, maybe San Juan School District, biggest Navajo students enrolled. Maybe we ought to reach out to Navajo Nation and see if they can, see if they have an interest in having a discussion with you, maybe some of our Navajo way of beliefs on this issue. I would think that there is some discussion there might be needed. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I think seeking input from all of our stakeholders is a great thing. The challenge we have that we got to keep in mind is when we accept federal money, we accept federal oversight, and the federal laws are very clear. So I don't know if there's any room within those federal laws to, you know, to go much in any other direction other than the federal direction there. So, but always input is good, and seeking our parent input, our stakeholders, and seeing where we can best navigate this. But I will certainly do that, Nelson.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Department of Education probably is dealing with or has dealt with some of these issues. Wouldn't hurt to knock on their door and run this by them and see if they have any suggestions. Thank you.
Will do. And by the way, they have a brand new superintendent, so.
Yes, I heard that.
So just, if I understand right, they're accepting input right now, so that would include from any of us, that would include everybody. So Nelson, with the chapters, with individuals on the Navajo Nation, as well as off here in San Juan County, everybody with any interest in this is invited to give their input. And so I think if we can help spread that word that people need to look at this, parents and everybody give some input on this. That's what the state board's asking for right now. So everybody on and off the Navajo Nation is being invited right now to do that. So we all ought to do it.
Let me just throw out one more comment.
Sure, surely I can do that with starting here at my local Ojito chapters and inform them. So thank you.
You know, learning more and improving our expertise in this area has been very helpful. You know, one of the comments that Mr. Kai's made when he came back from his national conference, he said, we would be so wise anytime we remodel a building that we would have an opportunity to build smaller gender neutral bathrooms. We would save, it would solve so much of what we will deal with in this area. So I mean, those kind of just suggestions and thoughts as we move forward could be very helpful in navigating some of this, you know, some of these matters a little more conveniently.
Yeah, just a simple restroom with, you open the door,
Facilities,
it
yeah.
locks, it's got
Yeah.
what you need.
What you're
in it.
seeing in a lot more public buildings now is just bathroom. It's neutral gender. Anyway.
So are we dealing with any of that right now, just within our school buildings of where the students have?
Yes,
we are.
we have
And-
dealt with
and
that.
so are we.
You know, we've tried to walk a very sensitive line. In most cases, we've tried to provide an alternative restroom and we've been successful. Should the student agree to that, and we've been successful at this point, that's a very good and successful conclusion. if we ever get in a situation where someone wants to test the legal grounds and say, I feel singled out, I believe I should be able to use the same facilities that they identify with, any other female or male use, then there would be some legal issues. But at this point, we have been able to work very carefully with student and parents and those involved and find acceptable solutions that have worked. But we have dealt with this, yes.
All right, Matt's not here, who's presenting policies?
I'll just speak to this quick. He's not here, and really, if there's a lot of questions, I would ask that we bring these back. If there are no questions or anything regarding these policies, then it is on as an action item. We could through it. But.
Any questions? All right. Okay, Steve, we're ready for your last training, and then we're going to be next month a review. We can't remember.
Well, I was going to review a little bit from our last training, which was 3 weeks ago, but it's a little bit fuzzy for me after 3 weeks.
Great.
So the new motions we talked about last week, we have refer to committee. So a group wants to, have a smaller subset or farm it out to somebody else, get either the recommendation or have them decide. Either way, we can do that. We can postpone it to a definite time. The classic case on that one is where we're discussing something, somebody comes in, needs to present, they have their own schedule, we can move to postpone that to sometime later, a definite time. Or even you could move to postpone it until after a certain other event in the meeting, like after public comment or after whatever, you could move that discussion or voting on that until that later point in the meeting with that particular motion. Table means to put it aside temporarily. So cannot be debated, cannot be amended, but you vote on it, whether to set aside temporarily with the idea that it's going to come back eventually, either the same meeting or the next meeting. And if it doesn't come back after that, then it's kind of gone. It's not on the table anymore. It's moved off the table. Call the question. That's for when we've thought that there's been enough discussion and you want to, you feel like it's time to vote. You can make a motion to call the question to shut down the debate, the discussion, and do the vote on the original motion. Okay, that's a review of the last meeting. Now we go into the last part of this section, which is pages 59 through 69. Point of order. Nelson's our point of order expert. I think you ought to be presenting this. But Nelson does it very well. If there's something that you think is not right procedurally, not right concerning Robert's rules, then you can state a point of order. Now, rules on point of order is it must be timely. It must be at the moment. You can't wait 5 minutes and say, oh, back then we should have done this. It needs to be at the moment. So you recognize to speak, given permission by the chair to speak. There's no second, there's no debate. After you state your point of order, the chair says something like, state your point. And then normally the president just makes a determination whether, yeah, that is right or no, it's not. The president can let the board as a whole decide through the normal motion of, the debate process. And then one thing it pointed out in the book was that it might be a good idea to empower staff to be able to interject points of order. So thought that was kind of interesting. It seems like Matt's really told me last time he reads Robert's rules for the fun of it. So
Yeah.
So an idea there. Okay, an appeal. When members disagree with the president's ruling on a point of order or any ruling or decision of the presider, then two members can together bring that before the board. One to make the motion, the other to second. There's your two members. Some motions to appeal can be debated, others cannot. It's a little bit fuzzy in the book about which. It said that matters relating to decorum should not be debated because it's probably just going back to personal opinion and be debating until the cows come home. So you vote on it. You vote to uphold the decision of the presider. If it passes, then the presider's decision stands. If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't, of course. Request for information. When a member feels like they need more information before they can really vote, they can request information as part of the motion. There's no second, there's no debate, no amendment, and there's no vote. The president rules. And the book points out that this is not an opportunity to provide information, like point of information, you know, I have lots of information I want you to hear, so I'm bringing up a point of information. No, it's if I need to get more information, that's when you bring up a point of information motion. There's three, what they call bring back motions. And these normally need to be approved by 2/3 vote. First is amend something previously adopted. So you voted on something and then you bring it back up after it's already been decided. That's a bring back motion. To reconsider it. Reconsider means you take up the matter again as if it had never been discussed in the first place. So you reopen up the discussion from the beginning. That's reconsider. It's not just to reconsider the vote, the outcome. It's to reconsider the whole process, the motion and the debate, discussion, everything. Postpone indefinitely. It needs a second. So this is just rather than voting it down, which would be the cleanest thing to do, there is this option to postpone it indefinitely, where it's not coming back to on the next agenda, like tabling. You know, it's postponed forever. Needs a second, cannot be debated, cannot be amended, and takes a majority to pass. And the very last one is withdrawing a motion. And we've kind of already discussed this. Once a motion has been made and seconded, then it is no longer the motion of that board member. It is the motion of the board. And so a board member can't unilaterally withdraw their motion after that. They might request to withdraw the motion, and the president might ask if there's any objection. If there's no objection, you know, it's kind of like the affirmative vote. However, if somebody does object to them withdrawing the motion, then it's up for vote with the whole body.
Can you make us a cheat sheet?
How do we get this all
Right.
in our system?
I think she had a cheat sheet. I think we got one once before.
Yeah, if anybody knows where that's how we can find it. I think you're right. I thought she did. We only got like one. So anyway, give your hands on that before you keep talking about. Or I'll bet we can find it.
Yeah, it'll probably take several tries to get these deeply rooted in our heads.
Well, we just need to practice them, so. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? All right, thank you much. Okay, school land trust exchange for the tenant superintendent.
Hold up. No, yeah, let's see that one right there. Yeah, I just want to speak to, this is something we've had a discussion with a little bit, but I want to speak to this topic and this, you will see this at times where the SITLA, School Land Trust Institution will try to, or they will propose, will propose to change trade land out. And I wanted, if this pulls up, there we go, just pulling up over there, give me just a minute. Let me go back and first of all, start with trust land and how, clear back to the very beginning of our country's organization. They recognized that there needed to be a way to pay for education. And so the founding fathers literally decided that if so much land was set aside for the purpose that through its development or however that land was used, if the profit would benefit education. And in the East Coast at that time, land was far more scarce. And so they spread these trust lands out that they designated there. And as they went further west, they put more and more trust land into the states. I think there's 4 states that have the highest amount of trust land that is allocated in them. And Utah is one of those 4 states. I'm pretty sure New Mexico's another one, some states around us. Nevada.
The reason there's 4 sections in each township is because of the dry nature. It takes more to feed a cow in the dry climates than in the, that's this.
Yeah, so it probably correlates with what they took there, but
because that was
all of
how
those,
it
you
was
can
most
kind of
great.
see San Juan County, I believe the line, it's kind of hard to see, but I did finally
You
recognize.
can see it right up Lake Powell.
Yeah, right there, this line that zigzags up right through here, shows the county boundary. But all of those little checkered boxes is trust land. And trust land, again, there is an entire office that's dedicated to managing these lands and to developing them in a way. There's a committee, there's a board, they have to develop this in a way that adds to the fund. Because the beneficiaries of this fund are our students that are in school in the state of Utah, our school students. And of course, those that manage this fund, their #1 responsibility is to increase the value of the principal of the fund. They have a fiduciary responsibility to oversee that. And that's really, they have blinders on of how do we best manage these lands? And the overall amount has increased substantially in recent years. I mean, I was a principal at Monticello in 2000, it probably was 2002, 2003. At that time, Monticello wasn't Title I. They had no additional money. We got a little PD in-service money from the district. We got a little equipment money, but we had no grant money, no Title I money, none of that at the time. And all of a sudden came this trust land program. And they said, for the first time, you're going to have a school community council and you're going to spend this money that's allocated you by student. And if I'm remembering right, I got around $5,000. That was the first payment to Monticello Elementary. And that felt like $1 million as a principal, because that was just amazing. The $5,000 was in an account that we could spend. Now I think Monticello, you probably know Julie, but I think Monticello's probably receiving now trust land $50,000. So you've seen it increase very steadily and very dramatically throughout the years. But this is what this discussion is really focusing on. And it's not, I want to be very clear, this is not a Bears Ears discussion. It's not a discussion about pros and cons of Bears Ears, because that could really distract and put us in the weeds about what we're talking about. What we're talking about is every single checker that's on that map that is in San Juan County. The committee and those that oversee the fund if they think there's land on there that's not going to best serve their purpose, there are times when they try to trade it, to swap it out to other land that they believe will better serve their purpose. An example of that is right now with Bears Ears. Even though we're not debating at all the Bears Ears Monument, the land that is within the Bears Ears Monument is not being seen as the best land to develop by the Trust Land Organization. So they have some proposals to trade that land out. Now, this is what the debate is all about. If the land is traded out outside of San Juan County, it has potential to be a little better development-wise for the trust. But as a county, we lose the potential if that land was ever developed within our county. If it was traded within our county and developed within our county, there's indirect consequences that could be very positive. Our tax base could be added to. An example of this, I think, would be a good example. This would be like the new clinic in Spanish Valley. There's a new clinic in Spanish Valley. It's up and going. It's taken off, and it'll provide, it sits on what was once trust land. They purchased that land from trust land. Now, trust land, the fund is going to benefit from that sale of that land. But now that it's developed into a clinic, there's jobs, there's going to be taxes paid in a very direct way. This county is going to benefit in multiple ways from that being developed. If that land had somehow been traded even across the San Juan County line and the clinic had been built there, yes, the trust would have still had the money for the sale of the land, but Grand would have brought in all the indirect costs associated with that clinic being developed. So really what you have in front of you attached here, and I brought it as just a draft letter because I've had some indirect discussion about this, is if the board is concerned enough to at least express a concern to the director of the fund, and make sure that they know that we are requesting that if land is traded, if there's trust land that resides in San Juan County and it needs to be traded, we prefer that land be traded to another location in San Juan County, where if there is development, it still provides potential for a tax increase and a tax base that could benefit our county and indirectly our schools, directly our schools. Now that's what this discussion is about. There is an action item. If the board, I have had the opportunity to reach out to, I was visiting with Mr. Dave Damskin, who's the former treasurer of the state, former Utah Navajo Trust Director, which is a similar organization. And just was trying to, and I thought I'd take advantage of that opportunity to visit with him a little bit about this, on his perspective. And, this was his perspective. He gave me these words of advice. He said that, keep in mind, anytime you have a voice, you should use it. I mean, that's what he said. We work in a public process, and that's how your board feels, and that the public feels. They should definitely voice that. Do keep in mind also that any board or any directors over a trust fund also have some very focused directives, and their directive in this case, their focus is going to be to increase the overall value of the trust fund. And so that's going to be what you're battling. That's going to be what you're up against, is that you have to somehow get them to just look outside of that one single focus, because all they're going to care about is possibly what land is the most beneficial to the trust. They don't care where it resides, anywhere in Utah, because they're just trying to increase the value of that trust. But somebody could very well benefit if that land is in their county. Anyway, I don't know if I'll let anyone else speak to this, because I may be at this point just rambling, but there is a draft letter. If the board would wish to take action, they'd like to revise that letter in any way, or if this is an item you would like to in any way take up, you have an opportunity.
Nelson, do you still have any questions?
No, I don't.
Still none for you?
I don't either.
I have some, not any questions, but just some additional information. And I wish we should have put this pie chart
Yes.
on the screen, and sorry for not thinking about that.
You did, you asked.
So I would like to suggest some changes. Superintendent and I worked on this together. What it really boils down to is right now, the state institutional trust lands is what SITLA stands for, has a map that they plan to take our trust sections, which is, anybody can see this little green thing, that's the
5%.
state trust lands that belong in San Joaquin County. This little pie right here, this red one, that is our private land. The rest of this entire thing is state or well, Forest Service, BLM, tribal, Bears Ears, and Forest Service, BLM, and state.
Would you zoom that in, that pie chart?
We can we, let's see, National Park Service. So in our school district, we have a really difficult time producing the kind of revenue we'd like to produce and the revenue that other counties and school districts produce in their counties to provide education because of our limited amount of private land and then state institutional trust lands, the SITLA lands. So essentially what they're saying and what they have planned right now is to take a big portion of this 5% and give it to other counties. In exchange, we would get their BLM sections. That would limit our future economic development opportunities for our school district to fund our schools, for our county to fund county functions that we receive from the county. And once those are traded out, we would never, ever get that land back. And I think Superintendent, you mentioned that they would get more, that the trust could get more revenue if traded out. Not necessarily. Right now, there are people, Representative Bill Lyman, and we have a geologist and some other people that are working, have given input and preparing a map for BLM sections. Now this, in a trade, the only way it can be traded is trust lands for BLM lands. So that's the only option for trading. So we have some people that are working on an alternative map. I talked to Dave Muir, who is the director of SITLA, and he said, you guys provide a map if it's viable. There's helium they're drilling for helium in our county right now in a couple of places. We have other potash and other mineral sources over on the east side of the county. So all of those things are being looked at right now. But what they really need is to hear that we do not want to lose our opportunities to other counties. They will benefit from our lands if this happens. And they are a agency that doesn't need input. They don't need a public process to make that change. So what we need is to be loud and clear that we don't want to lose these lands as an opportunity future generations forever for our people in our county. Now, one thing that the letter, so anyway, I have a few suggested changes. I don't know if you want me to wait for a motion when we actually do our action item, or if you
Well, I think we could discuss it.
want those now. So, so this time, because we have a letter to work on, we can actually have it from from the board members. So change it to a first person and include still include you as the superintendent as a signature on there, but have all of the board members, all of our names. That goes a lot further to have shown each elected official names plus superintendent and business administrator. So I would propose that change to include all the board members on the signature line and also superintendent and business administrator if appropriate. So replace the first paragraph that says in the February 9th, 2022 school district board meeting, the Board of Education passed a motion to, and we exchange that with as elected members of the San Juan School District Board of Education, comma, we, and then go on from there.
So Mary, let me ask you real quick, how timely is this?
They will pass this. This will be finalized before the end of this month.
Okay.
I've talked to Dave, your personally.
So we would
about this
have
whole
a
thing.
chance with the
It
revised
just-
draft of the letter before next board meeting, right?
Right, it
Okay.
would just, we would make those
Okay.
specifics right here. And then also to replace in place of, to whom it may concern, and I have a list. Dave, you're the SITLA director, each SITLA board of trustee, I have all their names and, who's the chairman, who's the vice chairman here. Spencer Cox, governor, Dietrich Henderson, lieutenant governor, Phil Lima, state representative, David Hinkins, state senator, Mike Lee, Utah senator, and Mitt Romney, senator. And I didn't write down our state our representative. Help me, I've just gone blank.
Curtis?
Yes, John Curtis to have, and then anybody else deemed appropriate to send these to, and include this map, this pie chart of our county, because most counties don't deal with this kind of issue, and they don't have the kind of funding issues that we have. That land can and will provide potential income or employment opportunities for people in San Juan County in the future. And okay, those are my proposed changes.
There'll be a motion, so what we could do is just motion
I can
with your
include those
suggested
and I can
changes or however you wanna do it, yeah.
this
Okay. We can
with
do
it, and then, okay, because last month we didn't have a letter, so we asked superintendent just write it and then he
Right.
signed it. But where we have a letter, we can be part of that. So I just need to, and
Does anyone have any concerns with? I just.
Did you? No. Someone is still any concern with those changes? Okay. All right. Tyrell, can you whip out the districts? Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, we can try to whip it out. So,
Yeah, you get going.
so last board meeting, we did discuss the audit committee policy. I've included 3 more just options. The reason there's multiple options is this is a board function as the audit committee. And so it really is a discussion that we need to have as a board to determine how you want to go about establishing the committee. As Steve pointed out last board meeting, our handbook, the board handbook, does say that committee members will be appointed by the board president. And so the new drafts that you can see on there do include a statement that would have the board president appoint board members to the audit committee. There's the 3 different drafts that I've included. The first one on there that says board approval. That one is the board president assigning board members to the committee. And then the board votes on whether or not to include public members of the public on the committee. And the board would vote on that as whether we are going to include them or not. And then the board would then appoint any recommendations that were brought to the board for members of the public to be on the committee. The second one is the same as the first two, where the board president would be appointing the board members of the committee. And the board would vote on whether to include them or not, but then we would just have the board president would accept recommendations and make appointments as the board president to kind of follow along with the handbook for even the public members. If the board decided to include members of the public on the audit committee. And then the final one is just the board president assigning board members to the committee. The board would not vote on whether or not to include members of the public, but those will just be handled on an individual basis. So if someone was to bring a recommendation forward for a member of the public to be included on the audit committee, the board would then vote to include that member of the public or not. The reason that it's really kind of, I mean, it's not super clear is because there is no requirement in state code or rule that requires you to have members of the public on the audit committee. We have to have 2 members of the board member as part of the audit committee to fulfill those responsibilities, but there is no requirement to include the public. And so there's no real direction as to how you want to handle that. So it's really up to you as a board on how we want to handle including members of the public.
Do you have a recommendation?
My where I would not be, I'm not able to be a part of your audit committee. I mean, that's expressly written in code as I can't be a part of it. No district employee could be. I mean, I don't have a specific recommendation as to how you want to handle it. You can elect to not, I mean, we could elect just to adopt the policy as is with the statement saying that board members would be appointed by the board president to be in line with our handbook, and then not address the issue of the public at all. And we wouldn't have to include that. There's no requirement to do so. So that is a discussion we can have here as a board.
So you've done the audit committee before, correct?
We've
That's
talked
what I
about
thought.
it.
We
We have
talked about
not,
it.
it is not gotten
Done. So go ahead, do this.
Well, my thoughts on this matter is, it seems to me like our handbook on appointing committee, that is appointing a committee of the board, a subset of the board. So I think, I like the idea of the board president appointing board members to serve on a committee, but as far as appointing a public person, yeah, I like.
Would you speak a little closer to the mic, Steve?
Get that by your throat.
I'm just saying that as far as the board president's authority to appoint, I think that should be for board members to a subcommittee. As far as appointing community members to serve on the committee, then I feel better if that's a board decision.
So what number was that one?
So that one I mean, if you felt the individual approval, we could just do where the board president would appoint members of the board to that committee, and then recommendations for members of the public to be included on the audit committee would then just be brought to in front of the board, where you would then vote on that as the body and approve those members of the public to be included on the audit committee, just as on an as recommended basis.
Because that was our first.
So that would be on there. That would be your, it would show up as the 2265 draft individual approval. So if we
Okay.
pull that one up, it would just, board members shall be appointed to the committee by the board president. Recommendations of members of the public can be provided to the board and appointed by the board with a majority approval to the recommendation.
I'm not opposed to that. Carrie, are you? Nelson Lucille?
Yeah, the audio is kind of poor. Would you repeat that,
So.
Tyrell?
Yeah, go ahead, Tyrell.
Yeah, so what I was just saying, Nelson, is based on what Steve had mentioned and kind of the discussion here, is that the policy 2265 draft individual approval is the one that just states that the board president would then appoint members of the board to the audit committee, and individual recommendations of the members of the public would be approved by the board as a whole.
And of course, that would take a motion. That's the one that we fill.
Yeah, that would be
And
an
that will
action
be an
item.
action item, so.
So I'm sorry, but the last part was kind of off again. I heard that the board president will appoint a board member and also one out of the public. Is that correct?
Is it 2 board members?
So it would be, the requirement is 2 board members, and the recommendation is that you do not have more members of the public than you do board members. And so our policy as it stands now would be up to 2 members of the public. Again, that's an option. You don't have to have members of the public. But the board would, if a recommendation was brought to the board, they could then approve up to 2 members of the public to that committee.
Okay, here's what I have been struggling with. From the board position, I mean, it's only right somebody with a accounting background, which would be Steve. And if there was 1 or 2 out of the public, I don't know who in Blanding or Monticello are accountants that are not that have no relation to individuals working in the school district or being parents of the school district. So
We would submit.
I'm there at that point. I don't know who we would pick if we was to get some public people.
So Nelson, what we do is board members, as the board, we can each submit names and then we would vote on those based on, I mean, of course, if I brought names, it'd be people that I knew, so I would give my recommendation based on what I knew about them, and then you'd have to go, based on what I told you. Same with you to me. So that's how that public would work. We each have to give a we don't each have to, it's just if we choose to, we can choose who we would like to recommend out of the public for that appointment.
Yeah, I understand that part. I'm just saying, I have no clue who out there in the county from the public would be available. Maybe you folks know of others. I certainly don't.
Yeah, I think we kind of.
Well, that's not anything we would need to decide right now, and it is after 4 o'clock, so we could continue this discussion if necessary after we hear reports.
So, okay, do you have any more questions on that?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, thanks, Tyra. Right. School reports, thank you for waiting. Mr. Ryan Nelson. You're gonna come to the podium.
All right,
Hey, you get it over with first, right?
that's right. I don't have to follow Ryan, so that's always good. But my assistant principal, she was supposed to be here, but meeting with some parents and teachers on doing all that.
That's
So
pretty
she'll probably be here in
important,
a bit. So.
That's
Who knows?
good. Okay, we're just pulling your, well, it's on the screen, but I don't have to hold up just a second.
You better enlarge that because I gotta be able to see it. No, I'm just-
So actually, Mary, do you want to start, get yours pulled up?
I will start. I'm most interested in hearing how, right in the classroom, how AV is going instructive, with instruction, and what frustrations you may be seeing and hearing from students, parents, and teachers, and what positives you may be hearing from that as well.
Because there's both, right?
Right.
We have both.
Always is.
If you look at our survey, a majority like it right now. If you look at that pie, some are still at maybe.
Right.
But this was done last week. And so we did some questions, talked to some teachers, some of their frustrations, obviously they feel like 80 minutes is long. And let me remind you, there's teachers that have been at San Juan High for 20 plus years, have never experienced teaching in AB. It's my younger teachers that did student teaching that are used to it. So there is some frustration. The frustrations come from not having a prep every day. They feel a little bit overwhelmed and not a lot of time. And they feel sometimes the classes are too long at 80. They like to, you can see they like, love to see them at 70 minutes. A 5x5, I know we talked about that a little bit, but couldn't staff it. Some teachers and students absolutely love it, get more depth of knowledge, increase less the homework so they can engage a little bit more with their students. It's just going to take a little bit of time. You know, what have we been at it for 2.5 quarters now, and to a lesson plan and differentiation, all different things that we want to implement in the classroom, we're still getting used to it. Some of the teachers are killing, doing really well and love it. Some teachers, they're more veteran teachers, struggle with it a little bit more. Never used to, it's always been a 40-minute class, but they're getting it. They just like a little bit more time to work on. That's the frustrations.
So right within the classrooms, what are, I mean, a little more specific
Yep.
with what you're seeing when you go.
When I go
And
to
I
an
guess that's maybe
yeah.
what you're.
In
But
observation, we'd love to start class with a detention getter, a bell ringer, and we want like kind of 15-minute intervals of different things, whether it's discussion questions or questioning or some lecture time, some study time, we allow, some teachers like a little bit of break. Kids come back to school, haven't been there for a year and a half, and aren't used to sitting in a classroom, so they allow a little technology break, which then they get back and refocused. They do engagement, group activities, any type of SIOP trainings, which we're going to provide more SIOP training for our teachers. It will be very valuable this summer, and we'll do that. So we're just, what I've seen is a lot of differentiation, different things that are happening within the classroom. You can't stand up there and lecture for 80 minutes. And if they do, we have some discussion because you lose the kids within 15 minutes, right? So there's got to be different times you got to break it up so you keep the kids engaged. And that's active engagement. I can go in a
and you're
classroom.
keeping on that in
Yeah.
each classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned a technology break.
Yeah.
And then, so does that mean they say, hey, you got a break, you can get out your phones and.
Yeah,
so you're
they'll
saying-
give them a little bit of break.
They're just-
You know, kids get a little anxious now. These kids are different now. They get a late. We do have kids dock their phone, but sometimes just a break, and it's not every day. But when a teacher kind of feels the climate of the classroom, they're going, all right, it might be a little break, let's get refocused, stand up, stretch a little bit. Because we know after 15 minutes, it's usually what teachers are seeing that we're not getting that engagement. But if I could go anytime during the class, and I'll know if that engagement's happening and what's going on in that classroom. We got some great teachers that are just killing it. And it's fun to get up here and brag about it because we do have an amazing staff. Lucky to be a part of it. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jim, Steve?
Interested in what you got going on during Bronco time.
Bronco time. It's almost a swear word. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a lot of different things. The first thing, our biggest goal this year is making connections, right? So on Mondays, we have each kid with an advisor. And with that advisor, we want one-on-one meetings with that advisor. They'll help decide where these kids need to go for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we have interventions including math, science, and language arts, their priority days. So Tuesday will be math, language arts priority, and then science on Thursday. Teachers will pull those kids in, put them on. We use that system called Tier Tracker, where we have all the signups. You probably heard about it from others. I think everybody in our district's using it. But we do a lot of interventions, homework time, because there's kids in this school. We live in a place where our region, we play enterprise, and we miss the school. So allows those kids to come and get some stuff caught up. And we've learned a lot over the year. It's not perfect yet. We're still knowing that we got some kinks in it. We found that freshmen are not ready for that type of freedom to choose what Bronco time they would be engaged in. So we're going to bring back freshman mentoring program during our Bronco time. So that we teach some lessons on study skill. We have juniors and seniors that are mentoring these kids and learn the study habits and get involved in activities and build connections within students as well. We do some fun things. We've done cornhole tournaments. We have a gamers thing that's gone big. Esports, I don't know if you know this, is a big thing now. I have no way is this school ever going to do esports until I walked into that classroom and saw 30 kids in there that don't do a thing in our school, but they're actually engaged in part of our. So I was like, we got to get this. We got to be a part of it. And it just touches those kids that aren't involved in this. And we love to get the input from the students. What would you like to see during Bronco time? Do all use them? All use it like they need to? No, but we're working on it, and it's not perfect, but we're hoping as we learn and grow, we get some ideas from ARL, Monticello High. And the great thing about our district is I can call a principal at any school and, hey, what do you do? What do you like? Let's not work. And we collaborate really well. So we've got a great team. So.
Nelson, do you or Lou still have a question?
Haven't put them to sleep, have I?
This is Lucille. I have a question about your culture club there. How are they doing, and do they get all the support they need? Because I never hear anything from them.
They are amazing. They just got done with their Knowledge Bowl, took first place overall that was held in our school. I had the opportunity to go in and out and go to the awards assembly. They did a Heritage Week where they had dances. If you can see the picture, if you can see our celebrations in the hallway on the top, right there, they did some dances and traditional foods. Yeah, they're a big part of our school. We love them, and they bring a lot of different ideas to our school and our community. Could we recognize them even more like we do a football team? Absolutely. It's something we need to work on and be better at. But we support them in what they're doing. We encourage, they're going to go on a big trip to Phoenix the end of the month to I can't remember the day culture thing down there. And we support them and those students, and they're amazing. They just did outstanding in that heritage language or knowledge bowl. So they're a big part of our school, and they'll continue to be a big part of our school.
And I'm sure we have a lot of good singers in our club, and it would be nice to have them sing the national anthem at our games as well. And then like even I would like to see for myself when we go up and attend these big conferences up in Salt Lake to have our traditional dancers in our district go up and participate and get recognized, because there's, you know, we have a lot of kids that are in our district that we don't see up there. So that's why I was asking.
I'd love to sit down and talk and that opportunity and see where we can and get those kids exposed in those, because they're you can look at their traditional wear. It's beautiful, and anytime they wear it at school, we'd love to see it, and they wear it with pride, and we'd love to show them off as much as we can. So I'd love to sit down and have that opportunity to see where we could showcase them a little bit more. Lucille, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Nelson, anything? So, okay, we appreciate what you do.
We appreciate you guys
And
and
thank
our
you very
administration up
much.
here. We've got a great team, so thank you.
Hopefully you feel supported.
We do.
It's been a rough couple of years, but
Hey.
sounds like some good things.
Good things are always happening there. It's fun to brag about. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, is it you, Ryan? Ryan and Ryan. One's just taller than the other, right?
And older.
That's true. He is older.
He's quick too, isn't he?
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. Nelson, do you or Lou still want to lead out? Just a little delay. We gotta.
I'll lead out. So we
Okay,
don't waste
go ahead.
time and they can be thinking.
Yep.
Okay, my question is the same. I want to know how A and B is working in real life at ARL, what the frustrations are, your progression with it, and what the successes are.
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge, and to say otherwise, I think would be misleading. It's anytime there's a big shift like that, those challenges are going to be expected. One of the really good things that has come, and it was really difficult to get to this point, but it did require that we completely redo our master schedule. That took us months and months to really hammer down. We didn't have really a full master schedule solidified until almost July, which usually it's done by January. Because we really were running kind of a 7-period day with an advisory intervention, kind of a flex schedule already with that 8th period. And so we had to go from a 7-period to an 8-period and figuring out how to make that work with what we have. That was really difficult. However, what came from that, and one of our celebrations, that we added 14 new elective classes to our master schedule. We looked at a lot of different options for filling those. And when it came down to it, we felt like one of the strongest things that we could do is to give students some opportunities to really dig into new opportunities, find something that would be engaging, that they could hook into at school. And that's been really, really successful. So we added courses such as welding, choir, ceramics, business and marketing, robotics. There's 14 and I can only name 5 off the top of my head right now. But
That's all right.
but intro to ag, animal science, a good wide variety and a wide range to really kind of pique a lot of different student interests. And it has been really successful in terms of really positive feedback from the community with the opportunities and that students have. So that's been a good thing. But some of the challenges, it is an adjustment to get to that point. The classes can feel long if they're not structured really well. We did spend time with our leadership team over the summer. We developed members on that leadership team from different grade levels, different contents, and we spent quite a bit of time developing kind of a template for what a good, effective 8-minute block lesson plan should look like. So a really structured template that we then, through our leadership team, kind of worked with the rest of our staff throughout the summer and then at the beginning of the year to try to implement, where we are really focused on scaffolding and building and moving students from one activity to the next fairly quickly, so we're not stuck in one thing for too long, and finding ways to circle back and review and those types of things. And so that process, even though it was a little bit painstaking over the summer, has paid off in terms of our engagement. I would invite anybody that would like to come at any point to come and observe what's happening in the classrooms. I've had a chance to do so with Julie recently, and the engagement percentages are really high. That's one of the first things that we look at when we go into the classroom at any point in the lesson. We do a lot of peer observations where teachers go in and observe each other, and that's one thing that we ask them to look at too. One of the first things, what is the engagement numbers? One of our celebrations is also we have an opportunity to participate in the Schools to Watch program, and that involved members of the Schools to Watch program from around the state coming and doing a visit at our school and spending an entire day. One of them was an administrator from Richfield, another administrator from the St. George area, and an instructional coach from the Salt Lake area all came to our school and spent a day there. And a couple of, they didn't say this to me directly, but a couple of teachers told me that these people that were visiting asked if we had prepped the students that they were coming, because they were just really surprised and just kind of shocked at how engaged the students were throughout the day. So it is hard and it's a challenge, but I think that has paid off. It's going to continue to be a challenge. The pacing that's a huge adjustment. Teachers are still really adjusting to figuring out exactly how much to assign, how much they can work through in a class period. But you know, the homework levels and really figuring out how to make that work. It'll take time to get to that point, but.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm kind of fixated on the flex time today. But a comment first. I had a daughter that brought home a little robotic thing and turned it on and walked along, you know. I was really impressed with it. So I asked her what class she did that in, and she said, "Oh, it wasn't a class. It was call it Mustang time, or what do you call it?"
We just call it advisory.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had that in place before. So
She said it was done during that time. You know, and I thought, well, that's very impressive to do stuff like that. So what else you got going during flex time?
So we have spent a considerable amount of time, even just since the end of second quarter, and really kind of narrowing the focus down on exactly what that looks like. And so right at the beginning of third quarter, I did kind of summarize all that and put it in kind of a single sheet to send to parents. And so I can share that as well. But really what it boils down to is we're focused on one of the challenges we've had in the past, kind of mixing task completion and interventions kind of at the same time. They kind of melded together, and really they're two distinct things. So we put systems in place where students that need to focus on task completion, we have, it's called homework call, where we can have students go and work in homework call, and we have teachers that rotate through the homework call. So the location is the same for students, but we rotate teachers through, and paras and all of our support staff. So at any given point, we'll have 8 or 9 teachers and staff members. Myself and Mrs. Turk usually are there as well. And we just kind of spend time really focusing in on helping students get tasks done and supporting them in that task completion. And then we have priority days for interventions as well. So each of our content areas have 2 priority days so that they can pull students in for specific intervention and reteaching. And so we've tried to really separate like the task completion. It's happening here with the support of a bunch of staff members, to the intervention and the reteaching. And we use a tier tracker system, just like a lot of the other schools in the district, to pull kids in for those reteaching opportunities. We've spent some time in some content team planning days to define really what does reteaching and intervention look like, and develop some mini lessons and things like that to really show what that looks like. So there's the task completion going in some areas. In some areas we have small group reteaching and intervention going and supports. And then the students that are not participating in either one of those have opportunities then to participate in the activities, like you mentioned. And we're working on bringing in some really good hands-on activities like those types of things, some makerspace opportunities. We did a really fun activity with some laser engravers that Gina and JJ Grover brought from the district office for us to use, some rocket launching. So some of those types of hands-on activities for students to participate in when they're not in the task completion or the intervention. Thank you.
Hey, real quickly on your goals, show it's a 7% increase in language arts and math, but it said that you'll compare them to previous year's results. And then as I go down the next slide, I first don't see the data for 2020. So how are you going to work through that comparison or figure out your growth on that?
So we don't have the data from 2020 because
Right.
there wasn't testing that happened that year, but we do have it from 2021.
So you go off.
So we'll go off of 2021 for our 2022 is based off of that 21.
Okay. Yes, that does make. Yes, that is true. You will. And then let's see. I had one other thing. Oh, so let me see. One other thing I was going to ask you. And so I've seen. I mean, and where are you at in that? Do you feel you're getting to that point? At that point?
I think we're making good
Close
progress. We worked really closely in our 90-day plan goals. Our teachers, at the beginning of the year, we went back and evaluated 3 years worth of data that we have on hand for those assessments. And our core teachers highlighted priority standards that historically over that 3-year period, we didn't score well in. And so as our 90-day plan and our action plans, they then worked to develop progress monitoring tools for students, specifically on those standards that we have not historically done well. So that's what we call their priority standards. And then we've developed assessments and things like that along the way, so we can monitor student progress throughout the year and reteach and things like that accordingly. And so when we're talking about the reteaching happening in our flex time, a lot of that is based on the priority standards that the teachers have chosen based off of that 3 years worth of data. We also have getting a little bit more familiar with RISE. Our language arts teachers this week have been giving the RISE. They on their own have been giving the RISE interim test, which would give us some much needed data and seeing how our efforts have come up to this point in the year. And that's happening kind of as we speak in our math teachers will be associated as well. So that'll give us, and then applying kind of the RISE boot camp based off of the results that we get, really kind of nailing down what exactly we need the kids to be ready for. So we've got some fun activities planned that are going to be cross grade level, some competitions and some of those types of things just for a couple of days to kind of help students get familiar with with the assessments and also make sure that we know where students stand and they can. So,
Thank you. You've used your allotted time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like I asked the San High principal, is your heritage language program supported and how are they doing?
yeah, I have to say, Valina, our heritage language teacher, has done a phenomenal job in really giving students a lot of opportunities. We had some great activities for Heritage Week as well, with students participating in lots of different activities. We had a really amazing school-wide assembly. I invited Julie to participate. We actually, at one point, they invited all the students to participate in kind of a unity dance, and almost the entire school did so. And at first I was really nervous about what was going to happen with middle school kids with that many, but it was a really awesome event, and really I think a unifying event for the school. They participated in the Heritage Language Knowledge Bowl recently as well, and students did really well there and represented the school really well. So Mrs. Cody has done a phenomenal job in giving those students opportunities, and we've tried to give her everything she needs to help them be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right, Mr. Is the room too warm? We can turn heat on.
It's really too warm. It's always a little warm for me, I tell you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present today and to talk a little bit about some of the things going on in technology. One of the big questions that I always get is how many homes do we have connected with the RRLA project? I just checked my controller. We have 312 homes out of 529 homes, home sites connected. So and 3 weeks ago, we were about 270. So we're in the process of tuning in those other homes. So basically is what we're doing. So that's been a big push and a big priority for us. We've also been able to hire, and we did this a couple of months ago, a helper that helps us with the RRLA projects. And we've started to do some things for redundancy and reliability in our network. Some projects that we ended up putting on the back burner as COVID came, we're trying to now get back ahead of where we were. So if you've been driving down to Mexican Hat lately, you'll notice the conduit in the ground is all the way to Mexican Hat Rock, which is fiber, the San Juan Fiber project. This is the same fiber project that UEN is completing with Emory Telecom. They have put in fiber that far to, and we'll build out Halchita and Mexican Hat and finish that second phase of the fiber program by taking fiber to Monument Valley High School and connect us there. We're currently on microwave systems and are currently maintaining those to deliver internet to Sevenitsky, Monument Valley, and Navajo Mountain. So it would be nice to get them on a more reliable fiber. I guess we're continuing to improve the connectivity for students. Kind of some of our goals. We are working more with the curriculum committees to help building digital resources for instructions, and trying to support teachers through that. Focusing on a redundancy of our resources, not only our hardware type resources and our network type resources, but also our personnel. Superintendent Tyrell have been working with us and Matt closely on making sure we have some redundancy for so people who know how to install virtual machines on our switches and those kinds of things. And
as part of that, we're really trying to increase our business continuity and our disaster recovery from when we have an event. So, and our challenges, we're continuing to work with the RRLA project. That still takes up a lot of our time and our resources. As I mentioned, our building connectivity, we're excited to bring TES and Miami Valley High online, so that will help with that connectivity. We have began working with our principals in the elementary schools to take home Chromebooks for elementary school age students. We haven't done that in the past, so that is a new process that we're going through. Now that we have some connectivity at home, it makes a lot more sense to be able to use that. As I mentioned before, the COVID focused efforts, trying to build or maintain those things that were neglected during that point, and then trying to be more responsive to the needs of teachers, students, principals, and stakeholders. We continue always to try and manage student data and managing security physically and digital security. Any questions?
You have a lot on your plate.
I have a big plate, but.
So I remember when we talked last year that kind of the concern would be like if it went down, that they would call the district to come and fix it. Have we had a lot of that? I mean, how we figured that out?
So one of the things that we came up with for that is we now have an SMS messaging service that has a service number that we've given out to our parents and our people using the RRLA. They're able to text in those conversations via text. And depending on the problem at the particular site, home site, we may be able to, we do have, with some work from the business office and some support from Tyrell, we have SOIQ in place where we have a number of contractors that we can call and dispatch out there if it's something they can take care of. If it's not something that they can take care of, we will sometimes dispatch either Wesley or our new RRLA person, Martin Yellowman, out and to take care of some of those more specific needs. But that has been pretty well received, and it's a way. It seems to be the preferred way of communication with our parents, and so the SMS help desk piece is going fairly smoothly. I'm sure it could go smoother in some cases. But.
I have a question. This is Lucille Cody. Who gets services as far as kids are concerned?
So our initial list came from the highly impact list of, I think it was probably 2018. That was our initial mapping service. So we have tried to build out those homes that we have. Now there are some conditions that are very difficult for us to overcome. One being topography in San Juan County, the other being radio signal to carry signal a certain distance, so that equates to cost, and that's kind of what we've come up with. Electricity is also another limiting factor. Those three factors, if any of those one things is present, it makes it very difficult for us to get. For instance, if you look at the Hatch community in the valley or in the canyon itself, down from Hatch Valley, we have a small window that we can shoot a signal down in there. But the landowner at the top of the hill has to allow us to put a tower on so that we can beam it down there. Otherwise, we just can't get to it. So what we've tried to do is we've taken that highly impact aid list and we've tried to determine which of those homes we're able to serve, installed those, and then hook them up.
Okay, so if there's kids that live in Montezuma Creek, is there an issue with that one?
In Montezuma Creek proper,
Yes.
well, there shouldn't be an issue. I'd have to look at the specific home site to make sure that there wouldn't be an issue, but if most of Montezuma Creek we're able to get to with a radio signal. And if what we've done is with that help desk piece we have in place, we've tried just to give those parents that number so they can send us their Google address, for lack of a better word, you know, their plus, what is it, 3A address. And then we try to put that in and see if we can engineer a solution for that particular home site.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is I have 2 foster teenagers and for 2 years now, and we haven't had anything or have been asked about any satellite services. So that's why I'm asking. I wanted to know how that worked.
Yeah, so we got that initial list from that highly impacted list pre-COVID. If they've come in past, then they weren't on that list. That doesn't mean we can't put them on that list and get them covered. For instance, we do have some opportunity if we have a lot of different kinds of radios. We have a point-to-point radio, which is a 1-to-1, or we have a point-to-multi-point radio, which is a 1 to 5 or 10. In those higher concentrated areas of population, it's a much easier lift to install a radio on a home with an access point because we can just tie it back to a multi-point radio. If there, and I can get you the number, or Kim or Anita can get you that text number if you want to just throw that into throw us a text there and we can get that on the list.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the comment I want to make is sort of make sure the board is aware. Some of the things we face in this district, just due to the circumstances, are challenging. We had to get into the housing market a long time ago to best serve students by recruiting and retaining teachers. So we're in the housing district, the housing business now. And if I were to add up the hours of time that our maintenance and our business office and all of our personnel spend on a housing issue, it's substantial. And I just want the board to be aware, you know, we are now in the internet. We were a little bit in the internet business with our homes, but we're firmly in the internet business now. Not in the same way of somebody that's charging for internet. We're not competing with them, but we have taken on a major initiative, and we're still trying to navigate through it and win. Really, we have not yet got all homes even hooked up, and we're in this a ways. But just be aware that when we start looking now, is we have a substantial amount that now is connected, and it's very exciting. For those that are connected, we've heard just numerous positives, and it's been very helpful. And as we navigate towards a district that might have rather than a snow day, we might have a virtual day. We might have, you know, there's some options now that are available to us that were never available because such a high percentage of our kids did not have connectivity. But what I do want to make sure the board's aware of is there's still, I think, some unanswered questions with this project going forward. I think about this time next year, we will need to be visiting with legislature, governor's office, economic development office, because I think we will need some financial support for ongoing support of this project. And I don't think it can come back and just come out of our everyday dollars that we've been receiving. You know, the dollars that have gone into helping to, you know, to alleviate this digital divide. That's been the big concern, is this digital divide and this inequity. And there's been a lot of money brought in to do that, but it needs to be an ongoing type thing. So I just want the board to be aware that we'll be given some thought about how to strategically best move forward in the future to provide the support. And at some point, there might even be you know, the dynamics might change to the point where we'll even say, is it still have the same need that it had then? But I don't know when that might be. Whenever there's a viable internet option that is affordable, then maybe that day has come, but there's nothing in the near future. Even our fiber that's going down into our communities is not being provided on the Navajo Nation right now as of an option to just purchase it from a provider. It's coming to the schools, but not past there. So just be aware that there's a lot of still challenges and questions we're going to have to navigate.
Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do.
I have a question.
Oh,
Yes,
go ahead.
Questions with an S.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Brewer, I would like to thank you for the work you're doing. You have a vast area to cover. I did get an email last week from Navajo Mountain with some internet issues, and I forwarded that to you and Assistant Superintendent Fitzgerald. And you replied before the day was over and already had helped them with whatever the issues were. What would you say the percentage would be in Monument Valley that's being in service working right now currently? Just give me a percentage number.
That's a little more difficult for me. Like I said, as I've been looking at it, we're at about, I know that Kim reported she was at 60% of her students at Whitehorse High School were connected. And that was up from about 30. I would assume we're a little lower than that in the Monument Valley area, probably around the 50% mark of the homes that we have installed is probably a fairly good guess. One of the things that, and that fluctuates obviously with the service, but I would bet we're about 50% of those homes, if I were to extrapolate that across from our whole numbers to from what we've got, what we're seeing at Whitehorse to what we're seeing at Monument Valley.
Okay, thank you for the answering that, because I do get a question on that quite a bit from community members and chapter officials. Now, you talked about the fiber project currently happening by Mexican Hat. I know last year, and probably the first part of last year, if I remember right, they were running fiber over Montezuma Creek direction.
Yes.
Do they have service over there now yet?
So what Emory Telecom does is they provide a circuit, and if an individual company wanted to purchase an ISP and open up a business there and sell internet service, that's kind of what Emory Telecom does. They don't operate the same in Montezuma Creek as they do in other communities in Utah. So we do have fiber to the school. We're hooked to fiber there at both at Bluff and Montezuma Creek, so our schools are hooked up, but the community has not been built out. Having said that, there are plans for a Community Connect grant from Emory Telecom to build out Halchita and Mexican Hat, similar to what they did. I think they did that at Bluff. They haven't, and when I say that, I mean they're running those service lines to the homes. But that has not happened there. In Montezuma Creek, we are only hooked up, the fiber is only hooked up to our buildings.
So once they get to Monument Valley, what is the expectation of percentage improvement of having internet to the school?
Well, internet to the school, I think our reliability and our uptime will be hugely increased. That it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be able to build that out to those homes. If they were to do that, that would certainly be a much better deal. But I think that our service on the RRLA project will look very similar to what it looks like now. Because the way we get to those homes is via radio signal rather than fiber. If they ended up coming over to Oljeto, we've really tried to encourage them to come over to Oljeto. I know there is a cellular one tower there that could use some fiber. It'd be a huge benefit. I would hope they would build out Oljeto, but that's really kind of in Emory Telecom's court. And we're in it as far as getting our schools connected to fiber.
Okay, I understand individual homes. Let me try to state it in a different way. Once we get fiber to Monument Valley High School, how much of a plus do we have? I'm trying to make a comparison here with what we have now and then what we will have later for the school itself, just the school location.
Well, certainly we will have increased reliability because we won't be coming back through radios. I may not be answering your question, but it's going to be a huge benefit for us. Where we had problems in Montezuma Creek prior to the fiber, we haven't had connectivity problems unless it was on our end. You know, we had a server go down or a switch go down or something like that. We have incredibly, I mean, I think that the standard is 5 nines. So 99.999 is what they have to provide for like healthcare organizations. And I think that's what we'll be seeing. We'll be seeing that kind of connectivity at our schools.
Okay, and I'm asking these questions because the last part of the statement that superintendent made, I'm trying to see what the future might be looking like for internet, for school, for education, not for individual homes.
Right.
For homes, or I'm sorry, for schools down this way and clear out to Navajo Mountain and Montezuma Creek. I understand that, yeah, at some point, we're probably going to run out of funding and going to have to look for more fundings to the legislatures, but
Nelson, I think
I want to have an idea what you're seeing. What are we going to be looking at a year or 3 from now? I'm sure I'm thinking we're going to continue going with the internet. There's no going back because we're used to this now.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I think what we will see, and this is just Aaron talking, this is not RT or Tyrell or anybody, but I think what we'll see is as they build out communities such as Bluff, such as Halchita, hopefully Ojeto, my hope is those community propers will be served by fiber, and that places like VCA, places like Douglas Mesa North and South, places like Redland will still have to have some sort of radio signals to deliver if we want to deliver it to the home. That's kind of my understanding of what will happen. That's not been approved or nobody's decided on that, but I think that there will be some of those outlier communities where we still have student populations that need that service.
Now, he mentioned internet in our schools. Internet in our schools is secure.
Yes.
And fiber will be there. And that's with our E-rate and all of that through the federal, that's going to be very secure. It's just when I speak of trying to find further resources financially, it's to keep the RRLA project going. That's an ongoing project it's going to have. So that's the student home part of this, not the school.
Okay, well, thank you for those answers and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, We need to go to number 15. That'd be Tyrell and superintendent.
And we're all in a team on this one.
Go ahead and lead out here. So several months ago, we first had the discussion and brought it up. Just the need to readdress capital project planning. We've met with several different parties, addressed lots of different needs. I want to point out that what we've kind of put together for you, what you can see in the brief building overview, we're really kind of limiting this to the major projects that we are seeing across, that we will need to address across the district. And we could get into the weeds and really dive into a lot of little things, but that's not the point of this conversation. And the idea behind this planning session is not to really get into those little things that we are going to be addressing on an ongoing basis. I've gone back and, I've listened to how we did capital project planning in the past, and I noticed that this is something that it takes, months of bringing it back, and it's an ongoing process. The board is continually addressing this as it is a board responsibility. And so I don't anticipate us having all the answers and having an exact plan today. It may be something that we are visiting about for the next several months. Just to start out, I want to go over that first document that you'll find on the board docs, the brief building overview. This just kind of provides you an idea of where we're at with all of our different schools and locations throughout the district. You'll notice the year of original construction, the age of the building, the total square footage of that building. The ADM is pulled as of October of 2021, and that's your average daily membership at the school. So it kind of gives you an idea of how many students are being serviced by that building. The building narrative is what I'll go over, and that's just kind of a brief overview. And then that last column there is just kind of what we've put into each of the different locations over the last 15 years. And that includes smaller projects and larger projects. So we'll just start and we'll go from north to south, essentially. LaSalle Elementary. The school currently is very outdated and requires major changes. Consideration should be given to replace the school with a new building. Keep in mind, this narrative comes from discussions with Tom, who's here today, and looking back at previous.
Tom, come on up and sit in one of these chairs because you'll be a part of this. Don't try to hide. Keep going.
Oh, yeah. And also looking back at, different evaluations of our buildings that have been done over the past and looking at what we've completed as those evaluations were done as well. Monticello Elementary is only 9 years old and remains in excellent condition with no major capital needs in the foreseeable future. It's kind of crazy that it's 9 years old already.
That's what they say, it's 9 years old.
Yeah, I think construction was completed in 14, but 13 is when it started, so it is 9 years old.
Tyrell, before you go, Tyrell, excuse me.
Yeah.
Before you go down too far on LaSalle Elementary, I thought I seen some numbers for a replacement for that school. Is this a correct amount, the 96,000 or?
Okay, so that last column there that you're looking at, Nelson, that's just how the money has been put into the building. So, and that could be a huge variety of different things that the maintenance department has included there. So it's just the money that we have spent on that building. It's not what it would cost to replace that building.
Right. But I thought I seen one earlier for a dollar amount for a replacement. That's the number I was questioning, the replacement number.
So Tom, that's the second document that you'll find under item 15 on your agenda.
Okay, I'll wait until we get to it. Go ahead, continue.
Okay. So Monticello High School, while it's the oldest building that we have, we've had major additions and structural changes that have been made over the past several years, and it's extended the functionality of the building for many years. It does still warrant a remodel for the front entryway, the front offices, and the public restrooms for extracurricular events at that school. That would be a major project that we'd have to address in the coming year. ARL, the school has not seen major renovations for several years. It is, the HVAC system is failing and needs to be replaced. The boiler is leaking and temperature control in the classrooms is a major issue. a major remodel needs to be completed to increase the functionality and safety of the building. And just a note on ARL, that was on it's been on the capital project list that the board has completed in the past for several years with those same types of items, and Tom can talk about that in a little bit here too. San Juan High School remains in good shape as well, but warrants a remodel to the to adjust the entryway, the front offices, and then the public restrooms there as well for extracurricular events to make the building more functional. Blanding Elementary School, the school is very outdated. It was built 67 years ago, and consideration should be given to replace the school with a new building. Bluff Elementary School is now 2 years old, and we should not see any foreseeable major capital expenditure with that building. Whitehorse High School, with the more recent renovations that have taken place there, the school remains in good condition and only warrants changes to the exterior of the building for bus drop off and then zero escaping the school to increase kind of the visual aesthetic look of the school to improve that. Montezuma Creek Elementary remains in great condition as a school, but does warrant a remodel to adjust the entryway and the front offices there as well. Monument Valley High School, with the more recent renovations that have taken place there, the school remains in good condition and does not have major capital expenditures that we foresee the need addressing in the next 10 to 15 years. TES is 11 years old now and remains in excellent condition with no major capital expenditures in the foreseeable future. Navajo Mountain High School, while the building itself is in great condition still, the HVAC system is starting to become outdated as it's the original system when we built the school and could warrant replacing soon. And that completes our schools. The transportation and our bus garage is also something that we have on here, and it needs to be updated with new bays and office space for the number of buses that we put through this district and the miles we put on buses. We only have a 2-bay transportation garage, and so that warrants updating and adding new bays. The district office building, this building is extremely old and needs major changes to the HVAC and domestic water piping to remain operational, and that could be needing replaced in the near future. The maintenance and buildings and grounds facilities that they have, they're just in this modular unit just across the parking lot, and the space is outdated and warrants replacing to provide the office space the department needs. Media center is also very old and could be replaced to provide a more efficient workspace. Technology in the warehouse, as technology continues to grow, we're going to see a need for additional space that needs to be allocated to technology to keep up with that growth. And the conference center that we have, which we've kind of talked about in the past too, has significant needs and would, to be fully functional, would warrant replacement for that building, which when we look at the complex as a whole, the district office complex, which include all of these different buildings here, maintenance, building and grounds, technology, the media center, the conference center. If we look at a long-term, if we ever did want to replace this building, all of that would be included there too. But that's kind of where we sit today with our different buildings across the district. Tom, if you don't mind taking some time to go over, so Tom, on the second document that you see there has provided just some ideas for some cost estimates. Keep in mind that these cost estimates aren't, these are just estimates from our department and internally, not from an external source.
The way building estimates swing, they could be way off, or 2 months from now, they could be high or low.
Yeah, the estimates that I put on here are based on current construction costs. There are 2 different costs I use. One is for office space and one is for school buildings. They're generally a little bit different. School buildings tend to be a little bit more Most of what I put on here for offices, for what Tyrell mentioned, for this building, for any of these offices around here, is based on office space, which is roughly, I used about $300 a square foot. Schools are up to about $450 a square foot, which makes it substantially more. But I base these numbers just on the square footage of the building that we currently have. The only one that has changed was Blanding Elementary. Because the school has kind of been outgrown, I added 30% onto that square footage and then calculated that out at $450 a square foot. So these are the numbers. These are the kind of the projects that we discussed that Tyrell just mentioned on the other sheet. And this is basically the cost based on square footage again and cost per square foot for what the space is. The only one that we have gotten an actual number on from an architect is the bus garage transportation facility. I did hire an architect to give us an idea of that. And that's the only one that we really have a solid number on from an architect, which comes in at about 1.8, 1.79 something. We'll call it 1.8.
Tom, could I interrupt you right now?
Sure.
Before we go down too far back to the LaSalle?
Yes.
The question that I was going to ask you, you stated in your report there, per square footage, that's the number for LaSalle School if it was to be replaced?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, it just kind of seems to be a low number.
That's the school is 7,400 square feet. At $400 a square foot, that comes out to about 2.9. So the numbers come out to about 3 million. We brought it down to 2 because we thought, after talking to Colby, who I replaced, he thought we could not build a really elaborate school. We could probably put a metal building, insulated metal building, and just incorporate some classrooms into that building and get away with a cheaper building rather than what we would put into a regular school.
Would I don't know if the rest of the board members would agree with me. I would think that would be to the discretion of board members, community, the stakeholders.
Absolutely.
To make that decision, not a former employee.
No, that's fine. None of this is our decision. We're just presenting what we thought would be a functional building that would serve the community. LaSalle is a little bit different because we don't know what's going to happen up in Spanish Valley. We didn't want to put too much into the building and have it move to Spanish Valley if that community grows to the point where we need a school in Spanish Valley. So this was a kind of I'd say a temporary fix, something to keep that school going until we made a solid decision, until a decision was made about what we're going to do in Spanish
I want to
Valley.
be very clear that this is just a draft starting point, no decisions, and the numbers. We even debated whether they should be on here, and then we thought, well, maybe it helps to have at least a starting point for numbers, something to start with. But we do not claim any decision that was made. If once we decide how to prioritize, then we have to decide what are we going to do within those projects, and that's going to dictate that number going up or down. So I just be mindful of not putting too much stock in those cost numbers.
Well, I just wanted to put that out there in case we have some stakeholders from that area that are listening, and I'm sure Lori, our board chair, will probably have some to say about that later when it's time, I guess. Thank you.
Yep. On the second page, under major construction, Those numbers, I put that in alphabetical order. They're not any kind of priority for me. Again, alphabetical order, and that's the same numbers that came off of the first page. After talking with the superintendent and Tyrell, we decided, again, that was just based on the needs of the district. Those were kind of our top priorities for major capital projects.
Let me jump in right there too and add, Albert R. Lyman is also a very old building similar to Blanding Elementary. You don't see on here an option of replacing it. This is almost assuming that we're going to renovate it, and that is based on, if you go back and listen to the capital discussions of the board in about 2014, 2015, that was a decision that was made by the board then. So it's certainly not binding today. The board wanted to readdress that, but they did discuss and took off of their capital list back then that they were going to replace ARL, and they moved it to renovate ARL. So we just picked up with that, but I'm pointing that out because that is something also that's just in draft. Should the board want to revisit that decision, it can certainly be revisited. But if you were to ask why does BS have a possible replace and ARL does not, that's why. Let's keep it. Now, and one other element to ARL that does tie in timely is they have a boiler system right now that has limped along all year. We've really babied that thing and it is getting progressively worse. It's going to have to be addressed this summer. So that kind of also needs to be weighed in if you're going to put that kind of money. Anyway, just be aware.
Okay, so I have a question that I haven't seen the answer to, and since we have all the right people here, does any of this, does it consider the student population in the buildings, and aren't we bursting at the seams at ARL?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that would, a major renovation could solve that.
Mhm.
Or if we say that was in 2014 and we're getting close to 10 years later, that I would think we would definitely want to look at both options. Not that we're going to go one way or another, but
It's all on
but
the
a
table.
definite relook at the building and how it meets the needs of students that age, because I think it's been bursting at the seams for a very long time.
Yeah, all the
That would
numbers
be
that I,
something to look at, and, to consider again, which way we would want to go.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to provide the square footage numbers on there as well, just to kind of give you an idea of the size of the building and then also the number of students that are there. This is, those are building narrative there with kind of telling you where we're at with just warranting remodels or renovations, or whatever we want to call it, or replacing the buildings, does take into account, our take on the number of students that are being serviced by those buildings, and the needs that those buildings have in order to address the needs of the students there.
So something that would be helpful for me to see is a correlation, a chart that would show the correlation of buildings and building space in relationship to the students. And I know it's, do you know what I'm saying?
So like a square foot per student type of thing, like how many square feet served per student?
Yes.
I've got that and I can provide that to you. I've done that study and kind of looked at that as well. So I can provide that for you.
So that we know if really a remodel would take care of the space needed for students, for student population, or if the build,
Yeah, so I did do that study. The numbers are kind of skewed just because, like, if you look at a LaSalle Elementary and a Navajo Mountain High School, for example, they show that they're
well,
huge
elementary
numbers.
would be different than, they'd be in two different categories.
Right, but if you compare them to the elementary and secondary schools, they're much higher than our other elementaries and secondary schools because you're serving less students, but you still have a lot of needed space. Like you have to have a cafeteria still and an auditorium, for those different. And so,
right, which is
the numbers are
which we
skewed,
can-
but because like if we tried to say, well, we want the same amount of square footage. as
No,
all
it's
of
just
them.
for comparison,
Yeah.
but you consider the the areas as well and how many students they serve. And I don't,
Yeah.
I don't anticipate anybody trying to say we've got to have equal, square footage per student, just that it gives us an idea of space needed.
I can I'll provide that. I've kind of crafted that out and charted that. So I can provide that to you. And I can put it on next board meeting as well as we continue the discussion. Or I can also send it out in an email for you to review too beforehand.
Just on the next board agenda. I think that's just helpful, more helpful information as we go through this process.
Sure.
Anything else? That's all I have. Sure.
No,
Need more information?
but just sit right there.
So right there.
Thank you.
Case you do, okay.
No, so I mean, now it's just, I mean, we really,
So, well, I guess my question, I mean, are you asking us as a board to make the priority, or I guess what I'm saying is, what are you, I'm thinking, what is your recommendations for the priority? You would, I mean.
Well, we've talked quite a bit, and what we'd like to do is for right now, just to show exactly where we're at. And then we'd like to figure out what is needed. Like you said, we'd like to really have the board's input as to what is needed, what could be helpful that would move us in a process in the next couple of months to really working through this in a way that when we have a final product, we do have a master plan that would prioritize some things, maybe in the near future, medium range future, and possibly even long future. But and it is very messy. It's very messy. I mean, I even go back and listen because we've all kind of done this because we were in on office really trying to get our minds around this. We went back and listened, and to be honest with you, it seems like it's been pretty messy for a long time. There just has to be some work that you jump into the pool and you start swimming and you start going. But we'd like to come back now and bring back in our next meetings anything that you need, but we'd like to start the focus towards really getting deeply in discussion about what should be at the top of the priority list. And there's just so many needs. I mean, right now we might just be processing how many needs we have. We even, in past capital that we found, all the past capital lists did not even have the district office in the departments. It was just schools. We felt that there's some big needs at the entire district level that need to be a part of any master plan. So that was something that we've added in there and put in there. But and then there's moving, when I say it's messy, there's moving components. Tom referred to Spanish Valley. I don't have any idea what Spanish Valley is going to look like in 5 years, and I don't have really any idea. I mean, I've tried to be informed, but it's kind of a guess as to what role will San Juan School District play in that. You'll make decisions along the way, because there's no doubt in my mind that if it does seem to take off like all of the plans and hopes are, there's going to be further dialogue between Grand County School District and San Juan School District about, a similar to of what was decided in the past or proposed in the past. When you look at the master plan in Spanish Valley, there are, and this is all not binding, this is just, they put a draft master plan together that isn't any more binding than this, but they have school places where they said this would be a great elementary school, this would be a great high school. And if that ever grows to what they are proposing, there will need to be some schools in that area, but to what district they're in, those are a lot of decisions will have to be made. But those things all come into play. Anyway, so that's kind of what I think we have, is to just really start the process today and to preload it and decide what the board might need to move forward.
So looking at when many of the buildings were built, and we don't have the original date for the old Monticello Elementary or the original date of Bluff. But in looking at this, it goes in line with what I've been told, or what we know, that in the buildings, many of these buildings were built in the 1950s and 60s in Blanding and Monticello, and I don't know what year the Bluff one and the original Monticello Elementary building was built. But in the 50s and 60s, San Juan County was the second wealthiest county in the state of Utah. Salt Lake County was the wealthiest, And we had a lot of economic activity back then. And we had a lot of opportunity for multiple land use. And now that ability to, and so our schools, our school district brought in lots of money, and there was a lot of money to build those schools, and that's when they were built. Economic activity funds education and our buildings. And so I was just tying this back into our item that we've got on the agenda for when we, if we lose more opportunity for economic growth in this county, because one of the things we haven't looked at is where's the money going to come from to build any of these. Now, that's the answer we don't have, is how will we fund our future buildings? We've got to protect any opportunity we have for economic growth if we want to do any of these projects. We just got to have some economic growth in Seminole County.
There is, anyway, yes, and I
And
agree.
it's
with
directly
I
tied
agree
to the
with
land.
everything you say.
It's
Couple-
directly tied.
You know, so, but just to add on to that, there is some proposed legislation that we'll see if it gets through committees and gets on the floor, but with Amendment G, I can't tell you I understand all this, so I probably should just not do this, but anyway, with Amendment G, of course, there was some fundamental change even in the state code of how we're going to finance education in Utah. And there was money that was allocated to ensure that the WPU was increased at a certain rate to be positive. That was part of getting the educational world to agree to change even our Utah Constitution of how we fund education. And in that process, there was also a fund set aside that if the economy was strong enough, carryover money would be moved over to this fund, and it would be used as one-time expenditures in public education. And that was exciting to public ed because that's how higher ed has always functioned. They've had a fund that they've been able to grab for one-time purposes, and they've been able to build a lot of buildings out of that because for one time we can put a whole bunch here to build a building. And public education has never really had that. That fund is built to and you've got this on your VA meetings as well, but in superintendent's meeting, they talk a lot about this. It's built up to over $250 million. And there's legislation being written right now that is proposing that money be spent in a one-time way to go to districts that are having challenges in bonding power to build new buildings. Now, I don't know exactly where San Juan School District would fit upon all of that. The example of the district they used was Wayne, and they were able to quote their bonding power. And if they raised all of their local tax effort was raised to the very cap, what they would bring in and what their bond would bring in. And so it showed that they would still struggle and be short in trying to replace their buildings. So the way this, and this is just for your information because you need to be aware that this might provide some support and they're thinking of trying to build this into kind of a scholarship or a grant type thing where if a county will take what they can through their bonding system, then they would add or match it or provide the supplement they need to build buildings. But 250 million is going to go like that. That's nothing on the state level, but it's not intended for everybody either. It's intended for the most needy in it. But could it change a million different directions? Yes. Could it not even materialize? Yes. But be aware that there is talk at least of some type of financial help to LES.
And as you pointed out, if something like that were to be put in place, that a local school district has to increase or tax their local constituents at a higher level in order. So you take the poorest counties, school districts in the state, and then you tax those people even more in order to. So a win-win is just to improve our economy. But anyway, anyway want to.
So what is the next step for next meeting? Would you bring back how much is in capital and suggested priority list?
Would you like a suggested priority
you
list
like
from us
that?
for a starting point? that we might look,
Yeah, the intention today was to kind of just have a discussion, kind
Right.
of get your feel as a board of what you would like to see from us and, you know, how we can help you moving forward. If you'd like a suggested, you know, priority list, we can do that, for next board meeting. And bring that, if you want to discuss more of the needs of the building, we'll do that. I mean, we just really wanted to kind of give you a starting point today, provide you with kind of a where we're at, and then have that discussion with the board as a whole today, and then move forward for the next several meetings.
So I like this. I like the direction of, I just don't want it to come and then we just, then we're done with it. We probably need to bring, what would you guys like to see?
I think administration is best to propose like priority, because we don't know
Yeah.
the condition of the schools really. You know. And another thought I had is that I think when we're talking about schools, we need an extremely long-term plan. So put Bluff Elementary on the list. For 70 years or 80 years or whatever we might think it's going to be, so we can start, you know, so we can see the future here and what we need to either save up or
That-
what. you know.
that is a little longer than what we were even thinking. Good point.
So
Okay.
when,
That would be great.
when we created this list before, we had a special work session as a board and sat down with this information with our administration and worked through that together. I wouldn't mind seeing that happen again. What we did is had it at the first of, we met in Bluff and at the school in Bluff, and we either had just a work session and that's all we did was plan, or we had it at the very first of the meeting. So we were fresh and we weren't tired of trying to work through things, and I wouldn't mind seeing that happen as we work through these and maybe.
So would you like to see their proposed priority list and then we work through that with them? Or, I mean, at
If
least
they propose it, then we probably don't, we need a work session.
well, we may not all agree on the priority. But I just feel like it kind of gives a little bit more of a starting point because you're very
Well,
aware of the
it's gonna-
buildings.
It's gonna lead us, once we develop a priority list, then it's gonna lead us into how do we best fund this list?
Right.
And do we want to make any changes? You know, we do have a plan in place that is generating a reserve for capital. Is it generating enough at a quick enough rate? Possibly yes, possibly no. All those things have to be explored. That will be part of the process once I think we build that plan. It can also lead us into other decisions. Even, do we really want to do this in one area of our district? If that's not going to be our priority and we aren't gonna keep that building long term, well, let's not do cosmetic things in it. Let's not do things that we could put off. Let's only do the things that are required to keep our building safe and efficient. But there are some things that sometimes you can put off if you know you're not. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that this would lead us into discussions even past that priority. And it could lead us even into, you know, some public meetings and things. I mean, I don't have any idea. But if in the end of this, and if there is legislation that proposes that there is financial help, but you have to cap your local tax rate at a certain point, then we'd probably have to go out to our public and say, you know, does everybody feel this way or that way, or what percentage feels this way? Because taxes for education, everything I've learned across the state are an interesting, you know, that's why bonds are very interesting. If you followed bonds in the last few years, because I've heard the war stories from superintendents, about 50% have passed and about 50% have not passed. And those, you know, and you can hear back and forth on that. But, and I don't even know what bonding capacity San Juan has. We've looked into that to some degree. But my point is, the public is sometimes more supportive of taxes being spent in the educational area than any other area. And so you may not always know where your public is at unless you really proactively work with your public to find out. So it could lead even into that area of saying, where is our public in regards to if we need a new school and legislation's gonna help us, but we've got to do this. So there's just lots of open ends to this, but I think the thing we worry about the most is the next step. Beyond that next step, it could get really confusing, but we can bring back to you we could build some kind of a proposed and bring it back in draft form. And that can be our next step, and we can figure out what the next step is past that. And like I saw in past, in 2014, 2015, I was able to see that capital was on the agenda for like 6 straight months, and maybe that didn't even get it all covered. But we may be on the agenda with this topic for a long time, and that's probably the way it should be. And we may have not been on the agenda as much as we should have been, and that's probably administratively, a fault of mine. So, but anyway, sound good?
Great.
President,
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to reflect a little bit. This was before my time on the board, and possibly even Mary. There was a school out at Bullfrog, and I don't know if you've been out there, Tyrell. Have you?
Bullfrog's not our
I was
school district.
a supervisor
Let-
over.
Let me finish. Let me finish. So we had a school out there, and teachers there for us. And I know it's not our building, but I'm thinking back. And tell me if I'm impeding into your district board, President.
Okay.
We don't know what's going to happen in Spanish Valley. They didn't know what was going to happen in Bullfrog, but as of today, the water level is really low. And when I look at it, I'm thinking it's going to take 50 years plus to get that water level back up there. So whoever owned that school is probably a loss for them. And I'm just comparing that with Spanish Valley and LaSalle. I'm not pushing for extravagant building, but maybe Tyrell, if you would come back and give us an increased number that's a little bit more realistic, I guess, rather than just a metal building. And if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we've got that cushion as a number, because inflation is going up all the time as well. So I would like to suggest that for the LaSalle, come back with a different number as for a cushion.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
okay, I want to clarify that our school, I was here with that school in Halls Crossing. Bullfrog is a different school district, so we've never had a school at Bullfrog, but we had a one-room schoolhouse in Halls Crossing. And it just had a couple of 2 or 3 years that I was out there, had, I think, as many as 4 students. Maybe it had as many as
2 when we closed it down.
8, or 12, a dozen at any point in time. But the benefit that we had as a school district, it was a portable building. And so the school district didn't lose a lot when that happened, because we didn't have $1 million school out at Halls Crossing. And I would think that's what we want to consider when we don't know what's going to happen, is we want something that is, if we're going to, depending on when that school is or is not replaced or renovated or whatever, but that was a big benefit that San Juan School District had not put a lot of money into a school at Halls Crossing. It was 2 portables.
One was housing, one was a.
Saul Nelson,
Yes.
your request, they could just put the addition. So we could see, Tyrell could add is the one we have existing and the one if we were to build the school, not the metal building. And then that way we could compare the two and then we could work through the, you know, in the future as we work through these work sessions. Would that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're going to adjourn until 6 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. We're hurrying. So,
I just was checking. to see if they were back.
oh,
That's the exchange.
okay. We got it.
Hello, are we back? Hello?
We can hear you. Nelson, can you still hear us?
We're here, Nelson. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, we'll get started here in just a
The
second.
mic is on and the video.
Just 1 second. You ready? Oh, so we have Nelson and still. Okay.
I haven't heard back from Lucille, but she's still signed in.
Okay. Okay. We welcome you back for our public portion of our board meeting and thank you for being here. And so two of you who will be receiving our San Juan Squared Award and we thank you for coming. And so we're going to turn the time over to Mary and who are you presenting?
For Mr. Care.
Okay.
Come on. You gotta stand center. Superintendent will come up here with us. I'm going to read first who wrote each piece. And then, so this one is, first paragraph is written by Gina Grover, our CTE director. She said, Mr. Kerr has been working diligently to develop new programs and CTE pathways for San Juan High. He has developed and updated the San Juan Bronco logo and letterhead and made the files available for staff to use. Mr. Kerr is a team player and working hard to contribute to each CTE program at San Juan High. The next one is written by Patricia Pace at San Juan High School. Richard has done an excellent job of developing a rich digital media and robotics program at San Juan High School. He has turned around a CTE program that was being lost. Not only has Richard devoted a lot of time and effort into developing a program, but he also volunteers his time making San Juan High's digital profile to the public look professional. Richard also volunteers his time to extracurricular activities like wrestling. Richard always has a positive attitude. I very much appreciate what Richard does for San Juan High. And the third one, and it is anonymous, unknown. Richard is always willing to lend his skills to take photos and videos at school events and to help others gain access to the photos he has taken. His talents and willingness to help and share are greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We appreciate what you do at San Juan High School.
Really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get a picture right there. Here's that. Should appreciate it.
Spot right here.
There you go. One shelf.
Joanna was nominated by Brenda Whitehorse, our district bilingual education director. And so these are the words of Brenda. I would like to commend Joanna Bethay for doing an excellent job supporting the San Juan School District Heritage Language Program as an administrative assistant. Joanna is organized and efficient in all that she does and always brings energy and positive upbeat attitude to work. Her enthusiasm is contagious. She goes out of her way to support the program in all aspects, which includes, excuse me, which includes IEC correspondence, JOM Title VI program correspondence, Heritage Language Conference, Dene Knowledge Bowl, and working on the upcoming K through 6 Dene Language Fair in March. And that has 2020 after it. So I don't know what that means exactly. And then this paragraph has 2021 after it. Joanna is always so friendly and professional. She supports the students in San Juan School District. Joanna is always so efficient and professional. She makes sure that our district's Indian Education Committee has all the expenditure documents needed for their monthly meetings so that schools receive their student materials for instructions, incentives, etc., while making this a seamless process. Also helps coordinate the heritage language events such as 7 through 12 Dene Knowledge Bowl, K through 6 Navajo Language Fair, and the annual Heritage Language Conference. And I wish I could speak Navajo because I don't know how to say the next words. Mrs. Bethay, you are amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate the work that you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, public comment. I'm not going to give you the rules. Miko, you already know what they are. Come on up.
We're pure intimidating.
And you get spring break, and I've got to work with it a little. Anyhow, you know, you've got 3 topics you'd like to address, so 3 minutes. There you go.
Okay, so back to last board meeting, discussing when spring break should be. I did a highly scientific survey of 2 seniors who have concurrent enrollment. And they both said, so 100%, said that they would rather have their spring break line up with USU's spring break than try to have it line up with the end of the quarter. Because that way they get a full spring break. The second topic is on the gender identity guidance that the state school board is crafting a guidance document. I went on their website, schools.utah.gov, and they have an announcement saying that there's a survey that you can take if you have a public comment or input. I clicked the link and it says that the survey is not available. So that's a little bit disturbing. It says it will be up until February 23rd. So there's no reason that it's not available right now. But there is a website you can, there is a contact us form. So I would encourage everyone who has something to say about the gender identity guidance to go to schools.utah.gov and then /contact, since their survey isn't working. The third item that I have concerns about is SITLA. I'm not entirely clear on how it works. So board member Shumway said that right now you can only trade SITLA lands for BLM lands. Does that mean that if we lose SITLA lands, we get more BLM land?
Yes.
Okay, so that is also a problem. So I want to encourage anyone who's listening or has any involvement in the school to contact the SITLA offices and tell them that we don't need more BLM land here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Right, Eva, no emails? Okay. That concludes our public comment section of our meeting. So, would you want to go to the end of the meeting? We do have one item. And then we need to come out and do consent then. We'll go through consent and action and then go back to close. We just have the personnel.
Yeah, that's very similar to last month, so nice.
Yeah, does anyone feel a need to go into closed session regarding that personnel list? It's about this,
So
there's really not much
way,
that's changed.
the way I see this is if we have an action item later that would be discussed earlier in any of the closed sessions, we need to do the closed sessions first. But if we don't have that situation, then I believe the closed session can be moved to, for ease of the public attending, that we can do
So
that
my
later. But
question is, would anyone like, personnel is, nothing's changed from last month with the recommendations on that personnel. So if someone feels a need to go into closed session, I'll open it up for motion.
I'm going to suggest we go in, we look at it after, because we are not going to vote on anything today.
Okay.
And if there's something that's an action item, I believe we need to stick to our current board agenda.
All right, so we're gonna move to the consent agenda. Do you have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Anna?
Lucille Cody, motion to move the consent agenda.
Any,
Steve already.
okay, thank you, Lucille. Steve made that second. So, any discussion on the consent? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, action items. Number one, we don't have anything on the COVID reentry. Number two, I have a motion regarding the district audit committee, but I will let whoever wants to make that motion word that how they prefer.
I move to approve the proposed changes to policy number 2265.
Okay, motion. Oh, go ahead.
And also to approve the draft title 20. No. I'm not done yet. Let me read back up. I haven't made the motion yet. I was looking at the wrong one.
You're good.
I move to approve the proposed changes to policy number 2260. And also approved the document, the title 2265 draft individual approval.
Okay.
Related to the audit committee.
Sorry. Motion by Stephen. I'm not going to repeat that. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Yes, question.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead, Nelson.
Yeah, just a clarification on the second motion regarding the signatures. Is that the letter? What are we referring to?
Oh, the motion was for regarding the district audit committee. So Steve, it's regarding the policy that we talked about with the board appointing. Oh, I will invite 2 members of the board, and then if we choose to invite a public individual to serve on the audit committee sporadically or when necessary, correct, Tyrell, then we have that option. That's what that it does. Is that what you're asking? This, oh, the signature one is the school land trip number 5.
Yeah, yeah, my question was regarding the school signature one.
Yes, so what's your question? Do you want to wait till I get down to that, or you want to ask a question on it?
No, I just wanted clarification on which one we're doing.
Okay, yeah, so we just finished 2, and the one you're asking about is number 5.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
so number 3, we already gave guidance. I don't know that we need to take an action on that unless someone
Did
chooses
we
to.
vote on 2? Did we, because
Oh,
right
2.
there at the end.
Oh, sorry, all in favor of,
No,
we
we
gotta go
did.
back to
Aye.
2. Oh, yes, we did say aye. Yes,
We did, and then we had a discussion
Aye.
about it.
The vote with Nelson.
Yeah, so there was the 5 of us. Okay, thank you. All right, number 3, I'm not sure we need to make an action plan. Number 4, San Juan School District Policy 4110, 4112, 4113. Need a motion?
I move to approve the proposed changes to policy number 4110, 4112, and 4113.
Okay, motion by Steve,
Second, Lucille Cody.
okay? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, school land trust exchange. I need a motion to, I'll let whoever wants to say their motion.
I will make a motion. I appreciate the superintendent's draft letter. He made a point that that was a draft and like input. So here we go, Eva. My motion is to replace the first paragraph where it says in the February 9th, 2002 San Juan School District Board meeting, the Board of Education passed a motion, replace that with as elected members of the San Juan School Board of Education, comma, we. And then down at a paragraph, I probably should have that up in front of me. That says at statehood, it would be the 3rd paragraph. The federal, at statehood, FITLA lands were dispersed as a birthright in a checkered board pattern. So it would say, let's see. As a birthright. So we're adding as a birthright because that's what State Trust Lands Administration, that is the language in their, in all of their stuff that they have, and replace students down on the next line. One of which will equitably replace students with all populations, because the birthright isn't about students, it's about anybody in Utah. Later, when they become students, they become recipients and are beneficiaries, but the birthright is
Do you want that
about
in
all
your
populations.
motion too?
And then with all populations throughout the state. Can you tell me when to? Last paragraph, replace I with we, past that hour, comma, instead of I. And it goes on to say, if I can be, and to say if our board can be. On that last line. And then replace or then add, not replace, so add each school board member's name and their titles. Lori is board president, Steve is vice president, the rest of us as board members. Keep Superintendent Nielsen on there, add Tyrell Pemberton as the business administrator, so we have 7 signatures. Also replace to whom it may concern with a list of our public officials, including Dave, you're the SITLA board of director or the SITLA director.
What's his name again?
David Ure. Now I have this list that I can. So David, URE. And then each board of trustee, and I have a list of their names and who the chairman is and the vice chairman. And then also to include our governor, our lieutenant governor, our state representative, our state senator, also Utah Senator Mike Lees and Mitt Romney, and Representative John Curtis, and any others that would be beneficial to have this information. And one last is to include San Juan County's pie chart of our land mass in with the letter. That's my motion, and make any other technical corrections. For instance, the date at the very top should be spelled out February 9, technical things like that. It's my motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Nelson, did you have some questions on this?
No, she covered it. I just
Okay,
was wondering about the list, and she covered the list, so thank you.
thank you. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Comment, it might be a little bit tricky to get all the signatures. I may need to really work on, once we get the letter put together, to get everybody to sign it. So we'll need to figure out a way to get that done in a
Okay,
timely
I
manner.
will do whatever I need to do.
I
to
know
help with
those that are, Nelson and Lucille would be, I'd just be finding a way to get a hold of you,
You know
so.
what? So they don't have to be original signatures that we
Okay.
send out, because we would make copies of the letters anyway.
Yeah, and I
so
don't
it
know,
can
do we
be-
have copies of the board member signatures? Okay,
If
if
they-
we can use those, we're good.
Okay, and yeah, let me scan, anyway, okay, great.
Okay, number 6.
All in favor?
We
Did we
did.
just?
Yep, we're good. I waited till after the vote.
Okay.
6, CTE student survey.
I move to allow the proposed CTE student survey.
Second motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Thank you. Montezuma Creek School Land Trust Amendment. I need a motion.
I move to approve Montezuma Creek School Land Trust Amendment.
So a motion by Mary,
I will second.
okay, Nelson, any discussion?
No,
All in favor?
aye.
And then extracurricular 150-mile approval for those trips.
I move to approve the extracurricular 150-mile trip that,
Second,
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
And then lastly, the 2022-23 San Juan School District Board meeting schedule.
I move to approve the 2022-23 school board meeting schedule, with the exception of June, designating June 21st as the date of the meeting.
the second motion.
And And I was going to say indicating July is option.
Awesome.
I second the motion.
She seconds again. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Opposed? Oh, we're all unanimous. Okay.
Can I just add a comment there about
Yes.
somehow inadvertently, the school land trust proposed due dates is not an action item, and I just have got to go back through my mind to figure out how, because it was on there. So somehow I've either deleted it or something, but anyway, I will, so this will have to come back to be ratified, but I'll be honest, I think unless you just looked at me with some looks that you don't want me to do it, I think I'm gonna let them have confidence that the board is supportive of those dates and it'll be ratified in our next meeting. Because I do think they need to they put them on the website for the schools to see what dates they're shooting for and all of that in the state. And if you needed to change it for any reason, we could still change it, but unless you give me a look that that's not a good idea.
It's a great idea.
Because I think you would have probably approved those tonight. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, that's.
Yes.
On the 150-mile farms, we did not utilize the secondary activity schedules. Do we want to approve that with the 150?
Usually those are, we're assuming they're approved when we approve those 150 mile. So, no.
Okay.
All right, the last thing we have is to go into let's see, information
Information
items.
I can run through those
Go
real
ahead,
quick.
real fast.
Just be aware, President's Day, no school, February 21st. So that's a great day. And then we did receive a notification from Bluff. I don't know, I'm not assuming you received those personally, but they are having a planning and zoning meeting and they've invited us to attend. And I was visiting with Tyrell. He believes he can virtually attend that meeting, which is a virtual meeting, just to kind of oversee our property in Bluff. There was, if you remember, when they first became incorporated as a city and they first did their very first zoning proposals, there was some concern how we were zoned. So we'll probably just want to watch over that, but we'll have that. And if any of you want to be a part of that or listen in, you have an invitation there with the information. There's also our San Juan School District Staff Appreciation Banquet is March 7th, 6 p.m. in the Arts and Events Center. You're invited to that. We hope you can carve that night out and save that date and bring guests with you and have a nice evening recognizing our tremendous staff. And then our next board meeting is March 9th. Right now it's scheduled for Monument Valley High School. Nelson, I might work with you as the day gets closer to decide if we're good to come down and have a meeting there, or if that would not be the appropriate thing to do in any way. We can watch what happens with the Navajo Nation designation right now. I don't know presently today if that's what we want to do, but maybe in a couple of weeks it's different. So anyway, that's what it's scheduled for. And when we can decide how that plays out, and if needed, if it doesn't feel appropriate to go be on site at Monument Valley High School, we could do another district office and broadcast the meeting. But we broadcast it either way, but where we kind of set up. So.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go back and see if there's a need to go into closed session.
I'm thinking if it's just that person, the same personnel, and we don't have Julie or Christy
Or Matt.
with this. And we'll have one
You'll have one
last
more.
opportunity where it will be
There is
done
no
deal.
major changes from last time, anything that could be added to it other than it's exactly where we were at.
So if there's no need to go in, we are going to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.